Are you on, David?
I came from Pfizer.
Hello, good evening.
35 years, and we...
Hello.
Hello.
...had a procedure, and
Not a smartwatch.
that made it possible to fill gaps.
You have minutes from last week for the 28th. We have 28th.
There's no gaps.
We did not do those
Processes.
so late.
Hi, everyone. I'm on the call. It's Maria.
Maria, we saved a seat for you at the head of the table tonight.
Oh. I feel so special.
So I've got all of my items in front of me, and I will I'll lead the call unless it gets messy, and then I'll ask somebody else to step in. But I think we should be in pretty good shape. The minutes from last week are not part of the agenda, so that's one item that we're going to skip. But if everyone is there, I'd like to call the meeting to order if I could.
We're missing two alternates. I don't know if they're coming tonight, Dave, or not.
So
well, I'm on the phone. Did you mean me?
No.
Okay.
Catherine and Matt.
Matt Olson is not coming tonight. He's unfortunately out of town on business. And who else is missing? Catherine?
Catherine has a conflict.
She has a conflict, so she's not coming either?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we've got our members, so that's great. And so Tim spoke with Ian Nevisor. He has Board of Ed at 6:30, so he's going to make it over when he's done. So when he's physically here, we'll let him have the floor. So in the meantime, I'll entertain a motion to move the other items up ahead of Regional School District 18, if I could.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Great. So other associations and nonprofits.
David?
Jude and
David?
yes.
We do have some live guests here that reference to their schedules. We have Tom Meyer and Jennifer Datum that will talk on the Infotech and the registrar budget. So if the commission would be, if the board would be okay with that, we move Tom to speak first and then Jennifer to follow him.
I'll make that motion.
Sure.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Okay, motion carries. So, Tim, should we start with Tom for information technologies? Is that okay?
Right. And what number?
It's 201.
60.
201, last page, maybe?
No.
Page 5.
Oh, and the insurance.
Operating.
It's
Okay.
page 3, bottom of
I've got
page 3, and
half of it.
page 4.
Thank you.
Maybe. All right.
In
Yep.
So
Bottom of page 3, top of page 4.
and the other stuff is pretty much it.
I remember this now.
Right.
These are the differences. The
Yeah.
column,
Right.
curve budget.
Okay.
So I guess, Tom, might help for them is to understand facilities and infotech. You're trying to do both of them. And you've said is you're being more reactive than proactive, and your strength is more in the infotech side. So this salary amount of $51,250 represents a new item in the infotech, and I think we get rid of $1,000 stuff. But just maybe talk about the infotech, and we can also digress into capital, which the committee talked about this afternoon.
Okay. Well, thank you all for allowing me to join you and helping me with the push towards the front of the agenda. I will say up front that this is my first pass through this whole budget cycle, so I'm completely without any precedent or experience, so bear with me. You know, when I started in July, I made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to go back and challenge any of the new budget that was going into effect on July 1, and basically, you know, sort of learn on the fly as far as what was going on with the role. In terms of the budget items that were, I guess I'm struggling because I don't know what the commission wants as far as information from me. So I'm really happy to answer questions.
Big
But
picture.
yeah, we have spent a lot of energy since 1 July with working with our partners. And a lot of that was around compliance of the town. Again, before my time, but it was determined that the town needed to have some significant actions as far as computer-based compliance to support the cybersecurity insurance policy that we bought and obtained during the, I guess, about the late summer, early fall. So that took a lot of background work with coordinating with CTCOM to work out clarification and normalization, I'll call it, of the IT structure in the town hall and the ancillary departments, such as, for example, standardizing across with Microsoft Word, standardizing some equipment, and working on a data compliance review and follow-up process, which is still ongoing. We're still working through those activities, but there was a lot of hands-on activities and work with Andy and Mike Ryder and Matt Ward who comprised the IT committee along with myself, and just sort of making sure that the activities there were consistent with those goals. And, you know, I think it's been fairly successful so far. But what we also were doing was looking at a number of initiatives. The significant one that folks are probably aware of, the police body cam infrastructure, which has had a lot of activity of late, including and certainly not limited to a major reconstruction in the server room downstairs in this building, and all of that sort of setting the stage for the transition of the what is now handled by the state police to the what will be handling through the town as far as the body cameras, footage, retention, redaction, that kind of activity. So a lot of forward-looking activities. At the same time, IT is an always challenging area of work in terms of making sure that everybody is functioning well, all the equipment works correctly, all the trying to come up with a set of processes. As I was talking to a few folks earlier, we don't have a lot of processes around IT. It's been my goal since I started to try and get that, get that sorted out. And unfortunately, that's been one of the challenges in terms of time and energy to start putting that together. And part and parcel of that is that I spend a significant amount of my time as a part-timer on facilities activities and, trying to balance the two against each other and make sure we get appropriate attention to things going on. I mean, we had a lot of facilities work going on recently as far as replacing air handlers and trying to keep up with various what's sort of an IT term, break-fix items in both IT and facilities space. So, and what, you sort of, as I get more comfortable in the roles, sort of start to understand where things are going to need more attention and where things, have to take a somewhat of a back seat. There's again, I apologize for flipping back and forth, but, we have some long-range planning. We want to try to keep some of the activities around the IT space focused on the future, and that would include a program to replace equipment, a multi-year program, a staged approach. We're also got a number of initiatives that we're looking at in terms of things like audiovisual in this space and other spaces in this building and other buildings. So, there's a lot on the docket, and I think it's a matter of getting some stability in the day-to-day stuff so that the longer-term stuff can be focused on. In terms of the funding, again, without any background to go on as far as how it's done in Old Lyme, I did sit with Nicole Ledger prior to the budget process and just sort of pick her brain about how it was generally approached, and in terms of, something that I thought was an important aspect to it was the concept of inflation and, how it was going to be handled. And what I asked her was specifically if there was a recommended or a townwide standard that was being used to handle inflation, and she indicated not. So the numbers that I put in the budget for 23-24, many of them reflect, I basically said to her, I'm going to pad these a little bit because, I don't know what inflation is going to come, how it's going to come back to bite us, but you certainly can look at, hard goods like equipment and supplies, anything with a supply chain behind it. We've seen essentially a rise in price and a lengthening of availability. So I also took a look at where the spend for 22-23 was focused and where we were, sort of seeing money go faster than maybe was expected. So I tried to add some somewhat artificial padding to that, and the intention was that talking to you guys, it would be, vetted as to whether it made sense or not. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm going down the road that you're looking for, but...
Tom, if I can jump in with you,
Yeah.
on the IT part, and thank you. We've had a lot of meetings, almost weekly, for an hour.
Right.
Almost every week, probably 3 out of 4 weeks a month. And a lot of it surrounds mainly the capital projects. But one of the things that's growing, if you flip the page to page 4, you can see the first page, the item that Tom was talking about. The item that jumps out on page 4, second Infotech consultant, which the current year we have 82,000 budgeted, and it's jumping to 123. That's basically CT comp. And there's 2 factors in there. They sent us a letter in the fall saying there's going to be a 15% rate increase across the board for everything they do. So what is in that money? They hadn't taken a rating from them at all since we've been working with them. So that is tied into a lot of different things that they do for the town. One of which is a piece of equipment we have, a laptop, a network switch, a printer. They're charging us like $25 a month per to service it. To be if something goes wrong, call them and deal with it. Doesn't cover the cost of replacing the hardware. It's the public health. The last few years has gone from $3,500 a month to about $7,000 a month. And honestly, this year, probably, my gut tells me it's probably going to go north of the 82,000 budgeted because we've brought hardware on board during the course of the year that each month that $25 gets added to that monthly number. Also built in there, software renewals are license and fees. So it's not all fees going to them. But I think the big part of the growth is the pieces of hardware that we have that they now have under their umbrella, as well as it looks like a lot of these the hardware licenses were pieces of hardware we bought 4 years ago with the 3 or 4 year license that's now renewing 3 or 4 years in the coming year.
But the bottom line, from my standpoint, Andy, is whether you think that that's a fair price for the services that we need to get from them.
Well, we've talked about that, and we really don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, I've actually got meetings scheduled over the next couple of days to go through, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. The discussions we've had this week where we've pinned down this $40,000 difference, and we're going to ask for clear and accurate information as to...
So I've got to...
Go ahead. I have a couple of questions.
With respect to that, I mean, the world depends on information technology.
Right.
And sometimes. So we need experts.
We absolutely do.
To do this, and I don't have I can't quite so the band was for the up at 80,000, and that includes 50,000 increase for Tom and a 20,000 decrease for the tech. So that's why we're just sort of upgrading
Right.
the tech. for Tom.
And there's facility money somewhere else,
And
too.
then Tom, right, he also has 50-something as a facilities manager.
I don't think...
No.
Under town hall.
I wish I
I was
did.
going to
No, but in the budget.
What's that? What's the 50,000 for the, under the town hall budget?
Yeah.
There is
a part-time position,
something
right?
called facilities manager
Right.
rate
Yep.
in the amount of $50,000.
Right. So split between the
That's
two.
my salary, and I have
Him
2
now.
roles.
So,
So I don't get a separate salary for the IT. That's
but we're lifting it here.
That should be corrected.
Well, no, we may have to hire a part-time person to manage the facilities.
He's finding he can't do both, so they're projecting that perhaps they need a second part-timer for a little over $50,000, it sounds like.
Okay.
So it's a new position.
And that's,
How much is Tom getting paid?
50,000.
50,000. So we'd allocate all of your time and expense to IT and then hire somebody else for facilities.
that's something the Board of Selectmen would have to recommend.
Discussing, yeah.
So I understand.
Yeah. So, but back to BJ's original question, I think it's, CT Comp took us from where we were to where we are now, and they did a very good job of that. But it's grown to the point where it's probably something that has to go out to bid for the future. Not for this budget. Maybe that's a target for next year, as Tom has more time here, just to see if we're getting our money's worth, BJ, or is it too much?
My question is...
Because they are a sole source. We buy all our hardware from them.
Right.
We're going to taking care of it and make get our insurance where the expertise really comes in, operate all this stuff so we don't get hit. It needs somebody to coordinate all that. And I don't know if it's a good price or a bad price. It might be the best deal in Connecticut.
But to say we need a really competent organization to do this stuff.
Exactly.
Hey, Tom. Yeah, could I ask two things? First, can people mute their phones who are on the phone?
That's me. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. And the second thing is, Tom, it sounds like what you said was that you're going to be sitting down with these guys in the next couple of days. to review that particular line item, which obviously drives the cost for IT. Is that the case? And if it is, does the committee feel like we should, or does the board feel that we should maybe revisit this next week when we've got a little bit more information from Tom's meetings with these guys?
Well, the answer to your question, Dave, is definitely yes, that's going to happen. I'm not quite sure what the day is. We're negotiating the date for the meeting, but consider that it will happen in the next few days. So it may time itself right to do that. But I would agree. It probably, from my perspective, which is very uneducated in this whole thing, I think it makes sense to have all the numbers in place and understand. I mean, right now, some of the problem is we don't understand what we're seeing on paper, and Andy and Mike Ryder and myself have put together a list of specific questions that we expect answers to, and that's I think that would be a smart move to really have that information. Quite frankly.
Andy, how do you feel about it?
No, I mean, it's a big number. I mean, if that number hopefully can come down, even if it's $10,000 or $15,000, that's a real number. I mean, I guess the other alternative is approve it tonight and then come back to it. But then they're sitting there saying, "Oh, geez, they just approved 123 for our services."
Yeah.
I think why not wait? I mean, that's the one line item in the IT budget that is in question, and it's more than 50%.
And perhaps the
other department.
The other question, Tom, looking down the road, do you think with CT Comp doing so much, your role, if you were primarily focused on IT, would that be reduced from your current workload, in the 50,000 range, or are you still going to be running around putting out fires and stuff?
Well, I think the fire putting out is going to continue. Part of that is getting a stable environment locally and having a set of procedures, et cetera. So I think there's value in creating that for the town for the future. Right now I'm budgeted at 25 hours a week. I could easily spend that on IT, probably double that, given what's going on. It's not always going to be that much.
Yeah.
But it's, certainly there's room for it now, and, there's, it's hard to predict anything breaking or problems coming up or, So I think what I've tried to do is strike a balance with the folks working here, because I don't think that it makes sense to pay for a help desk and then act as a help desk locally.
Right.
But at the same time, if someone says, my printer's not working, I don't want to walk away from them either. I think it's, it's kind of like that old biblical thing, you teach people to fish, they'll eat for a long time. So I think, Tim, it's going to be evolutionary. I think at the beginning, there would be plenty of things to support that position, and I think over time, as we get more comfortable and maybe I don't know what the growth of the town employees is going to be, but there are a lot of people that have my number and call me every day, so I wouldn't want to say that I could just cut in half my hours just as soon as there's someone to handle the facility side. And as I was mentioning to Perry, there's going to be a lead-in period. Anybody that comes in is still going to have to get up to speed on the facility, so that's going to for a while take some time out of the time budget.
The other factor in there is, and you'll notice this when we get to the Capitol, there are other projects that are just IT related and facility related. It's intertwined, obviously, in our world that has gotten more technical. And projects in there that
security
have to be managed
absolutely
by Tom.
Yeah.
And those projects take a lot of coordination.
Schedule every piece of technology that needs attention, software that gets renewed, contract. We do. Now, is it by department or is it all under IT? So to your point, this commingles.
Oh, absolutely.
So
yeah, absolutely. And in fact, there's a lot of facilities IT projects that I'll give you an example, security, new doors, to the building. You want to meld those two together, so it's a combination. This doesn't mean anything to you to look at, but this is a list that I submitted to the Board of Selectmen recently of all the tasks that I needed prioritization on. There's about 68 tasks on here, and that's just, looking at it from a 50,000-foot view, that's my workload, and, it's not going to change. I mean, as things fall off, more things come on. And we do have, so I think that even, we bring in someone to do facilities and they're aces at it, we're still going to have to work closely together to take on some of the more challenging projects that are out there.
Well, they're intertwined, as you said.
Yes.
I mean,
Yep.
doors don't technically fall into the IT person.
Right.
They would fall into the facilities, but that has to be coordinated.
Yes.
If you're talking about putting in keypads or
Alarm system.
or something else at all. And we've honestly, and this is nothing against Phil, he was not IT savvy. We ran into a problem at the transfer station when that new building was built, that he had the electrician install the wiring for the Cat 5 or 6 for the computers, and they just put it where they thought it was right. Well, it had to be redone. I think it cost us $6,000 or $7,000 to have it redone because there was no thought, because he didn't have the IT mind, again, not his fault, whereas Tom and if there's a facilities manager at that point, they'd need to work together to make it.
So is it one
sure it's
person that handles both because they're more efficient in one package, or two that are separate?
Depends on the skill set
right.
and the hours. You make it full-time or whatever. I mean, that's...
And then just to, as another example, that the senior center planning that's going on right now, I've been asked to opine on, network drops, just as an example. And, I basically said, listen, it's not my area of expertise, but I'll bring in the, CT Comp to work with us on this. They're our vendor, and, we'll provide that information. So, you guys will be hearing the results of that, down the road when we do that work, but that's certainly something that needs coordination, and that's a good example of facilities and IT coming together as well.
Well, police right now, we're putting security cameras down there, door strikes and things like that. So that's on a smaller scale.
Absolutely.
That's going on now.
It sounds like we should, until after Tom has a meeting.
If we could look at even though we're not voting on capital tonight? No, it's not. We're not voting on it, Tim, but Tom's here, so he doesn't have to come back.
Okay, capital?
At least if we look at the IT part of capital, or any other part that Tom wants to. We did have a capital meeting today, and I don't know if Tom has the same pieces of paper. The plan for this current year is Town Hall.
Which part?
This is on page 5 of our capital budget. The first item down really is $38,980, which is Town Hall surveillance and access in conjunction with the door project.
Yep.
We've got in carryover, we've got $30,000 for Town Hall doors from 2 years ago, or last year. That should still cover the cost of the physical doors. This is essentially
carryover.
a quote to
38.
do the locks and some exterior cameras. And, whether that's a keypad lock, whether it's a fob lock, that would be to be determined. But that's the kind of thing, again, intertwined facilities and infotech. And I think that 38.9 is a quote we have from CT Comp, if I'm not mistaken, Tom, for the...
But we have 30 in carryover towards that.
30 for the doors.
Okay, not for the 38.9.
I don't know the answer to that, Andy, unfortunately.
I think it just seems like a number that I think that Tom Riggio went over and reconfirmed in December that it was still a good price for what we're looking to do.
Yeah, the doors, Andy, well, wait a minute. No, those are town hall. That's the elevator doors. I'm sorry.
No, there are doors. I looked today in the carryover, David. On the carryovers, it is
Line 177.
177.
Okay,
Town hall
yeah.
exterior doors, $30,000, and that was from 2021
Yep,
budget.
got it.
We've
Got
been
it.
carrying that for a long time.
We should,
Hopefully $30,000 is enough for the doors we need to replace, because obviously those have gone up a lot in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
okay.
So there's a total of almost $69,000 for that combined project.
So, Tom, Andy, did Tom have the benefit of the capital budget when you guys were talking about numbers, or no? The entire capital budget, not just the IT capital budget.
I don't know what he's got in front of him.
Yeah, I've got many documents, many of them still trying to understand,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
New to him
So,
tonight.
yeah. But maybe it does make sense then if we let Tom reflect on the entire capital budget, and he can see all the line items that are being contemplated throughout the town, senior center related, police related, et cetera. And then also he gets a chance to catch up with CT computer stuff, so that we can have a better view of both capital and operating for next week. Does that make sense?
Yep. The one thing, again, there are a number of items in the requests that really the Board of Selectmen needs to say yay or nay. I'll give the example given, and we did talk about this today at the Capitol meeting, is Haynes Park video surveillance. Maybe we're not ready for that yet. And that was, we thought we'd push that off till next year. That's about $16,000. And Tom wasn't part of that conversation, but we've kicked it around in the IT meetings a number of times as to whether that was something that would make it. Because how many of these projects do you want to put in the budget, and then we may not be able to get to them all just physically, based on his list of 66 things to get done. I think the police department, the town hall, probably fall a little bit higher on the priority list than cameras at Haynes Park.
Right.
So why budget for it if we're not going to get to it?
Well, also,
They were going to do gazebo with the surveillance, so.
Oh, well.
Bob does it, meeting at night, but he wasn't going to put the gazebo where it was. He had surveillance set up.
I know. We've heard that before, but, okay.
And that's an example.
Yeah, I know.
I guess he'll
maybe
wait
there won't
then.
be a gazebo there this year.
Yeah.
Well, plus they've just made a recent decision to move the gazebo. In the original plan. So everyone's aware, I've taken that project as far as can go without a major decision, and that's having Comcast. All of this work they do for free is run the cabling to the building. So now it's
the bathroom building.
Yeah. The bathroom building, and it's decision time. And I said to Bob Dunn the other day, do you still want to go forward this, given that you are now physically talking about moving this gazebo, 100 yards away. I don't even know how far it is. But, and it might change the solution in terms of the types of equipment and such like that. And I said, I just need to know what your thoughts are there, and then as you said, Annie, it's on the big list of prioritization. So I'm sort of idling, waiting for that to occur. So
Give them that.
Well, no, it makes sense to hold off on.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we had a capital meeting today, and Grubb, Tim, and I.
one other thing that we said about, instead of picking up 3 of these buildings more or less at once, let's just do the police station and figure out if you've done it right or wrong.
Yeah.
Instead of having it right and wrong for 3 different buildings.
Right.
Let's
One
do
at a
one, make sure it's all correct, and then move forward.
I think that's
That made
consistent
sense.
what we had talked
That's
about
what,
in our
yeah.
last meeting.
And that's one reason the police is in this current year's budget, and that hopefully will happen this spring or by early summer. And then the one for quote-unquote next year that's in the budget is town hall, because those doors have been leaking and they need to be replaced. So you, again, it makes sense to do the other parts of that puzzle
Right.
at the same time. So,
So move on.
Okay. So why don't we hold off until next week when we have better information? And next week will probably be a little bit busy because there's a couple of other items that are going to get pushed as well, unfortunately. But at least we've spent some time talking about all these line items so that hopefully it's a little bit more perfunctory next week.
Who would be, David, I'm obviously suffering because I don't have the most updated paperwork. Can I get on a distribution list for these kinds of documents? I mean, I don't know how it's handled. So.
we got it from Nicole.
Okay, well, that's what
So
I'm
I'm
afraid you're
sure
going to say.
Amy may be able to help
Okay.
She can do it.
get him the
Maybe.
same, or
What are we calling that, so I know?
copy, what's the capital budget?
Just the capital budget?
23, 24.
I can get you a copy of that
Yeah.
capital budget.
No, that'd be great,
Yeah.
because I don't have that particular document.
That'd be helpful.
And I can even go through it.
Okay, great.
Okay, great.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else in here.
Excuse me.
There was one other thing capital related that's kind of an unknown that came out at last week's meeting. It's Cross Lane Firehouse and the floor there.
Yep.
I understood that you might have had a meeting down there with a contractor.
Well, there's a couple things going on there. There's a drain that runs in the
Yep.
equipment bay, sort of caving in.
Yep.
And so early on, like I want to say the first day I was on this job, we went over there and looked at it, and there was a whole group that was assembled. There was a structural engineer and Tom Mack from the local construction outfit that handles a lot of our work, and they said, yeah, we're going to go off and you know, put this job together. And then I didn't hear from them for a long time, and I was involved in just getting up to speed. And so, you know, a while back, I reached out to the engineer and said, what's the deal? And, you know, they sort of started it up again. And so there was another meeting over there, more measurements, everything. But here's where it gets a little confusing. I got a call from Steve Super, the fire chief, the other day, and he said, well, we're talking about that, but he started talking about a much bigger scale problem, sort of, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I got the sense that he was worried that the whole floor was settling and the building itself was having challenges. We've got some previously identified brickwork that needs to go on out there, so there's a potential lot of things going on there. There's a couple of items that are on the list, the big list, to redo some of the interior office space. So it sounds like that we're coming up on a lot of work for Cross Lane. I don't pretend to understand the complete depth of it all, but his point was to try to put these all together and solve all the problems instead of, you know, hitting it and coming back and maybe having to undo part of the last job, et cetera. So, you know, certainly there's more discussion there, and certainly it sounded like, you know, he was throwing around numbers in the $50,000-$60,000 range. There's an electrical job that, you know, they'd like to do to redo a lot of the electrical system there to support. There's a problem with they have special washers and dryers for the fire gear that they can't use. They need somewhere between $10,000 and $50,000 to redo all the electrical. So it's looming.
Kind of, you know, Rob and I met with them 10 days ago prior to them coming here, and that's when we first found out about the floor.
Yeah.
There is $25,000 in the carryover budget from last year for the Cross Lane floor drain, which was the identified problem you learned about when you first came to town.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden it's turned into who knows, maybe $200,000 to jackhammer the whole floor and replace it.
Right, as well as a 50 to 60K.
$55,000 worth
Yeah.
of electrical panel
Right.
replacement.
Now, on the electrical, they said that, well, the breakers are no longer available.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Now, I'm sure that there's still some breakers out there that you can retrieve on eBay or whatever, and buy a box full of them and have your problem solved.
Spares.
That's certainly possible. This is an example of the time and effort that I just don't have to put into those kinds of work. So, you know, one of the challenges when I came in here is I told myself I can't go back and redo the projects that Phil had done his research on. I mean, I had to draw a line somewhere. And that, I think, is an example, although, you know, I know they brought in Mike Swaney to give him the estimate. My understanding of the relationship he has with the town is that he's been around a long time, and you know, he's one of the good ones, and I had to give him, you know, the benefit of the doubt. Now, if one thing, I'm going to be honest with you guys, one thing I've never understood about how this town works is, if the intent is that we need to, for example, go to eBay and find, you know, parts, etc., then that's what I'll do in that role. But I've never been advised that that's the sort of philosophy I should have. You know, in my mind, you do a job, you do it right. And, you know, I'm not saying that the eBay solution wouldn't be right, but it certainly wouldn't be my first choice in a professional environment. So I'm throwing that out there as reality. You know, if the boss here says, you know, go find stuff on eBay, that's what I'm doing. But I just don't understand what the ration or the directive is for my role.
It makes sense to me that if you hire a professional electrician to do a job, you're going to listen to his advice, and if he tells you that to replace these parts can't be done because they're not made anymore,
Yeah.
you take his word for it.
Yeah.
But not to undermine your comment, Rob. If it occurs to you to say, well, could you find him on eBay? I think you'd ask the electrician that question.
Yeah.
Because he may or may not be comfortable.
He may not warranty the work. Insurance may not.
But it would be a job for him to, you know, go back and try to find something that is out of the normal.
Yeah, I believe me, I get it, because I use eBay all the time at home, you know, but...
Talking a job over $20,000.
Yeah.
So it would have to be out to bid anyway, right?
It
should be. We don't necessarily have to keep using the same vendor just because we've been using
Absolutely.
him. And I think there's
it comes back to, I think part of the point is the reason those two panels need to be replaced is because we can't get parts for them. They're perfectly fine as long as they work. If the reason they need to be replaced is parts are not available by going to the electrical supply store down the street, so we better replace them in case a breaker goes bad, but they were perfectly fine when they were installed 30 years ago or whenever the cross lane was built.
Yep.
And if there are parts to sit on the shelf in case a breaker goes, if that's the only problem is that we can't get parts, but we can new parts, then maybe the short-term solution is find 5 or 6 breakers on eBay,
Aftermarket.
have them on the shelf. Maybe 2 years from now, we plan to replace those panels, but get the other panel replaced that we were given the price of $10,000 to get the washer and dryer in there and running that we bought a year ago, almost last July, because it was an emergency and it had to be bought, and those have not been used yet.
Well, yeah, it certainly makes sense if the panel is working.
And that's a different panel that supposedly has to be replaced.
We shouldn't replace it because it might break
Right.
tomorrow.
If we can get parts that will keep it,
Well,
that
especially if we
are safe, that are legal, that our insurance company's not going to have a problem with.
BJ, we were even talking about maybe getting the 10,000 appropriated for the one panel and get that machine, because they have to take the stuff up to Lime to wash it. And if we need it anyway, maybe get her done.
Well, I guess Tom's initial question was he's looking for some direction, and I think that direction should come from the selectmen in terms of his approach to things, with the input that Tom, you may occasionally hear from the Board of Finance when you come before us, like tonight, but it's more the realm of the selectmen, in my view, to give you that direction. So
I agree, and that's like I said, I've approached them to clear that subject up. And we're working together on that. So, but my point was, I just don't have a good frame of reference on sort of direction to go to, so it makes it challenging to give come before you guys and give you numbers that I can back up with good logic. Sometimes it's just you do whatever seems right at the time.
Yeah, so you're looking for that direction. You're looking for prioritization of 68 projects. Totally get it, big and small. So 80-20 rule, hopefully. And then near term for us as the Board of Finance, next few days, hopefully meet with our computer guys, nail down the numbers, or it may just be information that you come back and we've got to kind of, have a view of a budget number, but it might not be perfect, and that's fine too. We do that. And then anything else upon your reflection of the overall capital budget. So you've got a full picture, as everyone has said, of the capital ideas and how they may relate to IT longer term. So it's kind of five items, but the near term for us is next week, hopefully getting this nailed down for the budget.
Yep. Okay. I will do my best to communicate some numbers or information back, by the next meeting. And, if not specific, at least I'll have a good idea of the direction that we're going.
Yeah. And if you don't have the information, just let us know that too. That happens.
Absolutely.
So, yep, get it.
Okay. Will do.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anything else from my perspective?
Anyone else?
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
For your time.
Nice to meet you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up would be Jen Tatum, registrars. We had questions about, you want to sit here in the middle? Sure. Yeah.
Jim.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, dial it.
All right.
I have some more current information about what's going on uptown.
Yep. First of all, thanks for having me to the meeting, very much. My co-worker, the other deputy, Kathy Carter, would be here, but she's traveling. And she and I spoke earlier today, so we're united in our approach, and we've discussed all the issues that we're going to be facing this year. So I have been the deputy registrar for 1 year, but I've only been registrar for 3 months. So kind of like Tom, I'm learning, especially with the budgeting process. Kathy, of course, has been around longer. She's been in for 6 years. I took over for Mary Lynn Clark, who resigned December 31st. So I'm sure you've had discussion before. We're anticipating the early voting. BJ from there was a meeting last night with Senator Martha Marks, and the Secretary of the State attended that. It was a virtual Zoom meeting that Kathy went to. I did not go to, but she told me some of the discussion that was had, because as you know, there's 3 early voting bills, and they've all been moved forward. So we don't know at any point what's going to be happening in terms of early voting and how that'll affect the budget, essentially. So all the registrars and all the towns are facing this unknown. Kathy did tell me that the Secretary of the State mentioned that if nothing is passed by April 15th, they'll put it off. And they'll probably put it off
For another year.
2 years, because they don't want to implement it during a presidential election year. So they'd put it off to 25. But I think the goal is to pass it this year and to have early voting for this election in November. Early voting will be 10 to 18 days in advance of the election, either from 8 in the morning till 8 at night or 10 in the morning till 6 at night. They'll include weekends.
Okay, that was my question, consecutive days.
Yeah, and then including 8 to 8 to Tuesday. There's so many different things going on, and nothing has been passed. So there's so many unknowns. And so that's part of the reason that our budget is higher, because we're trying to anticipate. And also, will early voting be for elections, primaries, special elections, referenda? Yeah, right?
Sounds like a blank check.
Yeah. So the Secretary of the State supported the bill of only primaries and elections, because referenda, if they get voted down, you have to go back out. So is it constant voting until it's passed in other towns? Right? So there's just so many unknowns right now. So, again, she gave me that April 15th date, and I don't know what our timeline is here, that if we wanted to wait and see if it was passed. And again, that was just mentioned in a meeting last night. So we need to anticipate for primaries, and we don't know that there'll be a primary this year. That's to be determined, but we have to plan for it, because if it does happen, we have to pay our workers and pay for the tabulators and the ballots and the memory cards and all the things that go along with an election. And we don't know how many referenda. Of course, we know there'll be the May referenda for the referendum for the school budget, but we don't know if there'll be any other referendums this year. I don't know if there'll be a referendum for the senior center project. I don't know if that's been discussed or not. So we've also been understaffed in the past. If you look at the history of the budget, we only took deputy registrars in 21-22. So we have increased the line item for not only for deputy registrars, but for assistant registrars. And then there are also special assistant registrars, which we can also appoint to assist us in our work. And the deputy, of course, to take over if we're not available or if we're incapacitated, or to take over under a resignation or other event like that. So that's kind of my overview in terms of why we have some increases in those particular line items.
Are there any reimbursements coming from the state?
That's a great question. Yes, they mentioned that in the meeting last night, and there would be reimbursement. They're pushing for reimbursement. It will be after the fact.
And we don't know how much.
Right. And as Tim mentioned, too, that might be for 1 or 2 years, and then sometimes they stop reimbursing you. So
don't rely on it.
Yeah, unknown at this time.
So, Jen, what we've got in the budgets before us, we've got a couple of line items that increase significantly. So one is primaries, and that basically doubled from $3,650 this year to $7,500 in the version that I've got. And then we've got education going from $2,000 up to $6,000 with all the required training, et cetera, it would appear. But we don't have increases or suggested increases that are material at the referenda line item, nor the election line item. The election line item right now we've got is $15,000, and that's up from $14,550.
Gotcha.
And then the referenda are the same, $5,600. So
for primaries, so you can see we're already overspent for 22-23.
Yes, yeah, but my personal question is, if this were to happen, obviously it's budget season, so we have to make contingency, or else we're coming back to folks for money, et cetera.
Right.
So on the election line item, we've gone up to $15,000, but if we've got however many elections, next year, I guess we've just got municipals.
Right.
Yeah, we just got municipals. But if we've got 10 or 18 days of open of early voting, rather, times number of hours times a rate per hour for the people that need to man this, would that require an increase in the budget? Is a thought.
Yes, it might. It might. There was kind of a joke amongst the registrars, how much do you want in your budget? And somebody said, put $1 million. We don't know. I mean, I don't certainly mean that for us, but it's hard to know. How many people would you want? How many shifts are you going to have? There's a lot of other implications in terms of the actual details of the voting in terms of it's not going to be the tabulator. It's a ballot that you seal into an envelope that then needs to be stored in a vault and tallied and accounted for. So there's implications beyond even just that. And if we're here at 8 o'clock at night in the building alone and security of the ballots, and there's a lot of other things that we'll be learning along the way.
Jen, to David's point, is it the case that if there is early voting, regardless of whether it's 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day, that this budget probably doesn't accommodate that?
Yes, I think that's accurate to say.
So I would be curious to know, I mean, we don't know whether there's going to be early voting or not.
Correct.
If you were just to, make an assumption regarding how the legislative vote is going to be, there will be early voting of such and such a parameter, how would that affect the budget?
Well, I think Kathy had, when she and I were putting the budget together, she did, I took notes so I could say all of this. I think she accounted for 2 people for 14 days for 12 hours a day. So if it's 18 days at 12 hours a day, it would be an increase. But if it's 10 days, maybe it's less, or it's less hours per day. So it depends on the formula, right?
But still, it's going to be an increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know whether, David, we want to wait until after April 15th to
We have our
vote on
hearing,
this.
we have our hearing about that time.
Well,
Yeah.
if
on the
we
17th.
if we don't want to wait, I would rather be too high than too
Me too.
low.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree
Yeah.
with you,
build
Jay.
into this
Yep.
budget an
Agreed.
early voting amount.
So just for reference, acknowledging that it was general election last year and it's municipal this year, but the election as of the beginning of February, we were at 18,422 spent for this year, and the budget's only 15,000 now. So,
Right.
I'd be inclined to think that it probably needs to be higher.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other item is a referendum,
How
which
many?
we've spent $10,000, $9,945 this year.
Right.
We only had the one
Correct.
on election day.
It's already over.
Yeah, but that was that crazy hybrid one.
I understand that, but it's still, we're going to have a referendum.
There was the school budget
There's going to be a,
Right.
well, that's last year.
Wait, the school budget
That's last year.
We're going to have one
in May.
in 6 weeks.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That is going to push us even further over budget on that line item, and we'll have a school referendum next year.
Probably have
And we'll probably have a
The
senior center
Right.
referendum. So,
in the summer.
yeah.
So a million sounds right.
A million doesn't sound too high. So my request, I guess, or suggestion would be that we table this tonight and we ask Jen in all of her spare time to work with Kathy and come up with a revised budget for next.
Total. Based on the actual so far this year, as well as
Sure.
a little bit
As much as we
more.
know.
Yeah.
And maybe somewhere even
In the middle, right.
It may come in at 150,
Or higher.
and if we don't use it all, we don't use it all.
And also, David, you asked about the training and education. That is
Yeah.
kind of a one-time fee for this year because we need to get our deputies on trained as well. Registrars
Yeah.
are required to take an eight-class certification course within 2 years of being elected. So if we have our deputies trained in that, then they can take over as needed, and they can learn as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I expected that there's good use for that money, especially given all the changes that have happened in the last couple of years and are about to happen too, it feels like.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, Jen. Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
See what happens.
All right.
Lot of unknowns.
Next week continues to fill up.
We're pretty full right now, David,
And
for
I
this week.
know.
last meeting, I think, Dave.
They have a
So-
hard time getting recruits, David.
Dave, Region 18 is here.
Okay, great.
See, move them in.
We have to make a motion to make that the next item on the agenda.
We already made the
Sure.
motion.
We're going
It's
back
actually on number 2.
back up to the start.
Gonna
So
pass
moved.
on the registrar, I guess.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right.
All right, well, thank you for having us. We appreciate you adjusting your agenda. Take us in. We just finished our meeting, so we came over here as quickly as possible.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Ian.
Oh, no
Double
problem.
duty.
No problem.
Did you bring us something to look at?
I did, yep.
Great.
I have, one will go this way, and one will go that way.
Like you've done it before, Ian.
Yes, I think there are 10 copies, and should be enough for everybody. And this is literally hot off the press, because one of our agenda items tonight for our special meeting was discussion of the movement of capital expenditures to the undesignated fund. And the board just voted to keep those in the budget for this year. So our budget is a 2.91% increase. Again, keep in mind, we had a discussion about a lot of things, but one of the things I just want to point out that the operating budget is only a 2.35% increase, but we are anticipating, because of the beginning of the pre-K through 8 facilities project, taking on some new debt service. Now, obviously, this won't be a huge jump this year, but it was about $800,000, which, as you recall, was going to be is offset by a significant decrease in some of the other debt service that we had. So the total increase in debt service for this year is $265,650, and that brings us to the 2.91% increase. The big drivers this year, one, as I said, is debt service. The other increases that we're looking at are in certified salaries. We do have a $415,250 increase in certified salaries. Keep in mind that does include a reduction of 2.9 staff members because of our decreased enrollment at the high school. You've probably heard varying stories. We are seeing an increase at the elementary level, but we're actually seeing a decrease at the high school level. So we were able to make some adjustments in our staffing and consolidate some programs. So we did make some reductions there.
How many students, Ian, at the high school? What's a reduction?
Probably down about 40 from last year. And then we also reduced 2.21 non-certified staff members. So a total of almost 5, really over 5 staff members across the board in terms of trying to offset some of those increases in salaries. Our certified staff did not, in their contract, have STEP this year. So as you know, in the teacher's contract, usually there's a raise included, and there's also STEP if they're on the salary schedule. If they're not at the salary schedule, there was no STEP. So they will be STEP next year, and we'll have to manage that next year. Employee benefits, we're seeing a slight increase. We're looking at about a 5% increase in our health insurance costs. Our health insurance collaborative has not voted officially, but we're probably expecting about a 5% increase there for next year. That may be adjusted, and we may be able to find some savings there, but we'll see how that goes. Slight increase in instructional programs for some software, some tech equipment. We do have a big chunk of new textbooks that we need within that line item, so that is driving that up a little bit. Special education, we're anticipating that going down by just over $82,000. Administrative services are increasing. That is due to an upgrade for our Wi-Fi system, which is about 10 years old and needs some upgrades for a cost of, that's the majority of it, $162,000, and an increase in our our liability, auto, and property insurance, and our cyber insurance of about $21,000. Other than that, pupil transportation is going down by just shy of $125,000 due to less buses running and part of our contractual rate, but we really have not seen a huge return to students riding buses since COVID. We've seen some bit of an uptick, but not much. Still a lot of people driving their kids to school, so we have been able to reduce our buses. And our plant operation and maintenance is going down. Whoops, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong sheet here. Plant operation and maintenance is going down, even though we did keep those capital projects in there. by, again, just about $125,000, or, sorry, 62. I'm looking at two different sheets of paper here. I apologize. Second meeting of the night. By $62,000. So that, as I said, brings us an operating budget increase of $748,231. You add in the $265,650, that brings you up to the just over $1 million increase for a 2.91% increase. So the other sheet that I shared with you just has some information just to give. Yep.
Can I ask you a couple questions
Yeah.
on the bottom here?
Absolutely.
You have student count in-house, and it's estimated enrollment based on October 1, 2022. Could you explain these numbers and what years these refer to? Student count in-house.
Sure. So you can't tell from this sheet, but they're actually in line with the budgets. So this is actually a bigger spreadsheet. We should probably keep boxes down here. So that's the 22-23, and this is the 23-24 if you follow those down. So that was our estimated student count in 22-23, and that's what it is for next year. And as I said, the reason it's just about the same, it's off by, 3 kids there, is because we're seeing, even though we're seeing that decrease at the high school level, we're seeing the increase at the elementary level. So it kind of evens itself out.
And I know it's not April 1st yet, so we...
Right, it's good.
It changed by 0.1% last month, I think, not to your benefit, but we did just have 4 students start at Lime School the other day.
That are from Lime?
That I'm not sure about. They live on 4 Mile River. Is there a cutoff on 4 Mile River? Is that
No, if they're on 4 Mile River, they're Old Lime.
Yeah, sorry.
Where, East Lime.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Ian, I may not have been paying, but it probably wasn't. What's the reason for the increase in debt service?
Oh, because of we're starting the facilities project, the referendum that we just had.
Okay, and you're going to be borrowing money?
Right, so we have not borrowed that money, but we're anticipating borrowing that money. The architect who did the study put together a spending plan. So,
in addition to the student count here, are there other students in the system? Because I thought it was around 1,300 kids.
Yep, so these are just the students, that's why it says in-house there. Those are the students that actually attend our schools, so other students are either outplaced or attend magnet schools, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have tonight, Tim, but if you look at our monthly students report, it does detail where those students attend. So the other sheets that I've given you, one is just the proposed facilities projects. This does say, and there's a note here, that there are $413,500 worth of facilities projects, but as you'll see, $100,000 of that is coming out of the undesignated fund, because that's really something that was connected to the turf field project. But the other remaining $313,500 are included in this budget. And then just, because I know people don't always remember where we've been, but I think it's important to look at our historical perspective here. We are spending, or proposed spending, is just shy of $760,000 more than what we were spending in 2019 and 2020. During that time period, we had 2 negative budgets, negative 1.06 and a negative 0.13, and then we also had a very slight increase in 21-22, 0.47. So yes, this might be slightly higher than what you've seen in the past few years, but again, at some point, there's only so many times you can have a negative budget without starting to really cut into your staffing and other things.
What was the student count, and I don't know if you'll have that number, for 2019, 2020?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
I'm curious how it relates to the
I'd have to look
student
that up.
population.
I have one question.
Yes.
Heard the other day that there was still a continuation of an oil spill or leakage at the school.
Yes.
Saying anything about that?
Sure, absolutely. So we did have an oil leak in August. A pipe that comes from literally this big, a line that comes from the oil tank to the boiler bust at one of the fittings and leaked oil all over the boiler room floor. We do have a drain in the bottom of that floor that goes to a holding tank outside. Most of it drained into that holding tank, but it actually overflowed onto the ground because there was so much oil. We did have crop environmental come immediately within, I think it was within less than 24 hours, as well as DEP. They were able to recover, they estimated around 600 gallons of oil. So there's about 400 gallons that are unaccounted for. We spent $75,000 of our own funds to help support that cleanup, and then our insurance kicked in, the first round of insurance through KERMA, and they spent they cover up to $150,000, and then beyond that we have reinsurance which covers up to $2 million. So we are still working on that cleanup. In fact, if you've been by the middle school, we have an excavator out there because DEP wants us to dig more dirt from around that holding tank. We've also installed, I think it's now up to something like 16 or 17 monitoring wells around the school. We've actually started installing a couple of them in neighbors' properties to make sure that potential contamination plume has not gone to the other neighbors' properties. We got really good news just yesterday that the boiler room actually had a vapor underneath it that we didn't know about when they built it. So what that does is prevents the oil from going into the ground, because there was a concern that we might have to dig up that boiler room floor. That would be a nightmare. So we're actually have a meeting tomorrow morning with DEP. They're coming out to take a look at that and just to kind of give us some more feedback.
Are they trying to recover oil at the moment?
At this point, no. They feel like all the oil that is able to recover it, has been recovered. We probably will be installing, I'd say there's a 95% chance we're going to install a pump and treat system for the groundwater to make sure that the groundwater isn't contaminated, because some of our neighbors do have dug wells, and we'll continue to. We've tested the neighbors' wells twice, and we will continue to test those as well as our own wells to make sure that nobody's.
How many neighbors' wells have had problems?
Well, nobody.
Potential problems.
Right. Good news is nobody has had a positive on any of their tests, any of their well tests, except for us. We had one on our drinking wells, which is not associated with this, but DPH wanted us to check the drinking wells. I'm going to say it's probably 10 or 11 households, because what they do is they do a 500-foot radius from the spill, and they determine where wells are in that radius.
So does it include Lime Youth Services, daycare center, things?
It does, but Lime Youth Services, much like you guys, use our water. So
we're on it as well.
Yep. So the town hall is on our water system. Lime Youth Service Bureau is on it. The firehouse is on it. The daycare is not on it.
The daycare is
Society, yep.
No, I need that.
Thanks to
Except
Tim.
for the building in the back, right?
The historical.
The older kids run.
Oh, maybe the older kids are still there.
Where's that?
The daycare center.
Yeah, so we tested their well because they're not on our.
You continue to monitor as much as one time and you're done.
Yep. And we have an LEP, a licensed environmental professional, who's working with us, and he's there pretty much every day doing something to monitor that. This is probably something that'll go on for a good 5 years, if not longer, continuing to monitoring that. We did have, I don't know if any of you recall, when we renovated the high school, we had a similar situation because the oil tank was leaking in the high school, and we had, again, a significant environmental hazard. I don't know how many gallons leaked out, but that had to be constantly monitored for about 5 years till DEP was satisfied. I still believe that's what's causing the PAHs in our drinking water.
Are you still removing soil?
We weren't until starting tomorrow. We will be.
How much more?
We don't know. They dig until.
Where does this dirty soil go?
It goes to facilities that are trained to handle that soil. So
and then we purchase soil to replace it?
We're in luck because we don't have to purchase any soil. We have a ton of topsoil hidden on our property. I can't share where it is, but because I don't want anybody going and getting it.
A nightlight out there?
No, but what we took off when we put the turf field in, we kept all that dirt, and that's how we backfilled.
And that's not contaminated?
No.
Okay, great.
No, totally different part of the campus.
So it's $2 million max insurance coverage. So if this goes on for 5 years, is there potential to run past that that insurance?
There's always
money?
the potential if we had to, let's say they force us to dig up the boiler room, which I don't think is going to happen, but let's just say that happened, yes, you could easily exceed the $2 million in a case like that. That's highly unlikely. We've talked to a lot of people about this, people we've hired. We have a lot of people in the community who have expertise in this area, and most have said this is nothing. This is 400 gallons. A tanker truck tips over on the highway and dumps 10,000 gallons. 400 gallons is nothing.
But you usually have a hazmat crew come in and clean it up.
We did.
No, I'm saying they may know sooner in an accident on the highway than maybe the school knew about the leak.
Possible, yeah, possible. But it was, we were there literally, it's on our website. I want to say it was within we believe it happened overnight. It was discovered by 7 o'clock that morning, 8 o'clock that morning.
So I think quantifying, Ian, it's Dave. So seems like right now insurance will cover what's required as has been laid out. That may change over time. Back to the budget, though. The budget that we're looking at right now, is this, in your view, the budget that's going to end up at referendum?
That's a great question, Dave, because we just had a lengthy discussion at the board meeting, and I believe that, yes, that will be the one that ends up the referendum.
Okay. Yeah, I guess a big question is there anything else out there? You kind of resolved the treatment of the capital projects, which was a material item. Is there anything else hanging out there that could change this materially?
No, I don't foresee anything changing it in any way.
Okay, great.
The 313, I'm looking at the budget summary. There often is a line for capital. Is there embedded in?
It's embedded in plant operation and maintenance, Tim, and the reason that looks higher is because that also includes the salaries for our facilities and maintenance crew. So if you look at plant operation and maintenance, you can see it's 3979901.
Yeah.
It's embedded in that number.
Okay.
But it's not higher than the year before.
That's correct, because remember, we cut 2 points. What did I say? 2
Right.
points?
I thought you just said that it was higher, but it's not. Okay.
No. And it is actually lower than the year before, too. The year
I see
before was
that.
400 something.
Good.
Great. Any other
Right.
questions for Ian? All right. Ian, thank you again for making it over after it's a long evening for you.
Yeah, no problem.
So, yeah,
Again for having
appreciate it.
me.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have
Good
a
stuff.
night.
Okay. Do we get back on track with the regular agenda? Other associations?
That is Maria and myself. Maria, are you there? Okay.
Yes, I am here.
Tim, you had reached out to the Academy to find out.
Yeah, I didn't hear back, so I
Okay. presume,
since no one's here, that none of the representatives, and we, by the way, should add Roger Torrey Peterson is 7007
Yes.
on the list.
That is, it's on the agenda.
The agenda for
It's not on the
tonight.
agenda.
It's not on the,
Oh, yeah, it's on our agenda.
is it where?
Number 3 on the agenda.
Ah,
It's here.
It's there.
It's there.
Well said.
It's the last item.
Oh, she redid it then.
oh, the one I got via the internet was not on it. Okay. I'm in Tim's camp. Lime Academy College of Fine Arts, they asked for $20,000 for this year, which is the same as the last 2 years, and have not asked us to increase that at all. So I don't have any information other than...
There is a letter in our book, just
Right, it's explaining.
thanking and asking for the...
We met with we did meet with them. They showed us their facilities and told us how they're planning to expand and grow. I met with Mike Duffy and Jordan Sokol. They've asked anyone if they would like to come down and tour the facilities, and they are continue to increase their student body population.
In fact, when the senior center talked to them about putting some programs in their facility, they said, well, things are going rather well, and we don't think we'll have any room to share. So that's encouraging, because that was the big concern that all those buildings.
Right.
Yep.
They seem to be using it all. And Dave, you may have a little more input than I do on this. I know you've been involved there.
Yeah. So full disclosure, Tim and I are on the board there.
Right.
And yeah, no, the improvement is very marked and heartening. So I did let them know that they should give as much financial information as possible, and I think that they gave in our book. I'm just looking. Yeah, they've got budgets versus actuals, and so
Right.
they've made the effort to be as transparent as possible. The need for the $20,000 is similar to other nonprofits in terms of their ability to get grants to demonstrate that their hometown is also behind it in some measure. And so there's not an increase that's been contemplated nor been requested.
They also have a new director, correct, Dave?
Yeah.
They do. Wendy Burry, who joined from a nonprofit up in Norwich, after a pretty extensive search, probably 60 folks were ultimately considered over a 7-month process to replace the outgoing director, who was there for about 14 or 15 months. So Wendy just joined about 2 months ago and is getting up to speed. But yeah, it's been personally, it's been a very encouraging experience to date to see it come back to life. With the number of students that they've got right now that are full-time students is 25, and they're expecting 40 for next year. Peak prior to University of New Haven was about 80 students. So
they indicated in 2026 they're hoping to be up to peak.
Right. That's the goal, and they've been achieving all the goals that they've set for themselves too. So Jordan and his wife Amaya are co-directors of the academy, not managing directors, but co-directors for art instruction and academic programs, and they've just done a phenomenal job since they joined about 2 years ago.
And they live at Boxwood, right down the street, which is super convenient. They've also acquired a number of small collections of paintings and sculptures, so when you go in to walk around, it's very vibrant. They have the store of curiosities and art supplies, which is spectacular. It's worth a trip in there just to check the place out. So I'm hoping that we approve the $20,000 for them for this year. What's the next one? Sorry, guys. We are on to...
Well, the Flow Grizz, that's the other one that they're requesting an increase for the first time in a long time, and I didn't see any letter or anything in our...
That's on next week.
They're going to present next week.
Coming in next week.
Okay.
Yeah, they're presenting next week. Both Josh and Matt are coming in next week.
Yeah.
They're also looking for a capital request of $50,000 a year for 5 years.
Okay.
Flow Grizz?
Yeah.
The Flow Grizz. Next is the Lime Art Association. Again, in your budget book, I believe there is a letter and the budget. She sent a couple of revised and proposed operating budgets. Their request is same as last year, I believe. The Art Association, same as last year for $8,000. However, they are doing a roof project to replace the skylights and repair and replace the roof that is leaking. It's page 1, Andy, under section 211.
Yeah, no,
Oh, you're going to capital?
I'm on the capital.
Yeah.
But there's an increase in the request there. that
Right,
I'm
it went
talking
from
about.
20,000 to 10. And I don't know if you want to discuss that tonight. They're doing a second phase fundraiser, and of course, they're trying to raise the money for the capital improvement, and they are in...
It's page 1 in capital.
Got it.
And the request is going from 10,000 to 20. It just seems strange that as Tim and David said, it's important for us to support these organizations so they can get outside funding,
Right.
but we really don't have any other typically ongoing capital. We don't fund any other capital for these organizations. We have been funding them when they started doing the siding and the...
10,000 a year.
And then to jump up to 20.
It's on the back side of the letter dated December 15th.
Yeah.
The letter to Nicole from Elspeth Dowd, the director, and it explains a little more about the fundraising and the money that they're requesting in capital is needed for. And I don't know how the board feels about it. Of course, the money's needed, but I think it's going to be a year of a lot of requests. So, and there's a third page from them that breaks down total project cost, skylight and roof portion of the project, as well as attic insulation and flooring. Again, these should all be in our budget. It's way in the back, BJ and mine in this section.
The narrative's kind of on the back.
They're double-sided pages.
In section
211.
So I guess
we're not considering capital tonight.
But we might as well talk about it while we're here.
Yeah.
I don't know what our kind of philosophy is with respect to capital. We've got a number of nonprofits and educational institutions in town that are absolutely wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But how we make a fair allocation of the taxpayer dollars,
Right.
I wish we had a formula.
Yeah, what do you call it? A fortune-telling ball of some sort.
Yeah, and historically what we've done, to Andy's point, is we haven't really funded beyond our operating budget for folks because it is important in the grant getting process for a lot of these folks. But I think we made an exception and within the last kind of 3 or 4 years, and it may well have been the Lyme Art Association that we made that exception for their siding. And unfortunately, I think, well, not unfortunately, but I think others have now started to point to that and said, what about us? So it may be better to,
A number of years ago, I think we made a one-time to the Lyme Academy.
And the historical got a little bit.
Right.
When you,
So there've been one-time deals for a specific item. I mean, Lyme Academy, I think, for some AV equipment or something like that.
Yep.
That might have been 10 or 12 years ago.
What I'm seeing
as opposed to just, here's, they're on a capital campaign to raise, I think, $900,000, and they're coming to us for an extra 10, and nobody else is even getting the first 10.
Well, I'm finding when we see the Flow Grizz next week, they're doing the same thing, but for a lot more money, and I don't understand.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of it, but...
Well, the capital committee did discuss it today, and we kind of penciled it back down to $10,000, but that was just,
And probably some of these organizations, you could say, well, how's your endowment?
theirs was not great, and I have the number.
Well, not here
Yeah.
necessarily, but.
But on the other
It's
ones,
pretty robust.
some of them.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of them aren't as good today as they were 14 months
Well,
ago.
neither mine.
Right, exactly. But that's a snapshot in time.
Are you speaking to just today?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying not to look today.
I think you're like a fine wine, right? You get better with age.
Well, I'd like to be supportive with their project, but my recommendation is to wait until the end and grant them the 8 and cut it back to 10, and we'll wait and see where the budget falls.
Well, I think with that preview, again, we're waiting on FlowGriz and the library for next week. That's on the operating side and on the capital side for FlowGriz as well. So why don't we push the vote to next week, and we'll carry on the conversation on the capital side next week in its entirety for everything that's in capital.
That works for me, but at least if you need to, you can go back in your budget book and review the Art Association because the documents are in there. I have a new budget, Dave, for the Historical Society, other than what's in the book. I'll pass it around. They're asking for a $1,000 increase instead of the same request that was for last year.
So they're asking for $8,500 instead of $7,500?
Yeah, instead of $7,500. They were receiving an income from the daycare center for use of their parking driveway area. That has gone away, as well as they're facing a couple of one big project, which is in next year's budget. The large project is going to be to replace the front steps and stairway. But before that, they have a small shed on the back of the building that is disintegrating, and they could use a little funds for that. So they've increased it by $1,000 from $7,500 to $8,500.
And their donations are way down, like way, way, way down.
So we've got in the budget book, it looks like we've got this year's budget, I see, and we've got a projected budget for 6/30/24 as well.
So I'd like to recommend that we increase it by $1,000 when we vote on this.
Okay.
Okay. Last but not least, Roger Torrey Peterson Estuary Center. I visited with them. They are very active. They provide educational programs in-house and at other local schools within the New London County, as well as parts of Middlesex County, about science and birds and nature. They have run an after-school program there, and their request is the same as last year, $10,000. Of course,
they ran a great program on Election Day.
Did they? That's great. The facility, they've really made it open for students and children, adults, and of course they have very big aspirations of growing. They have future plans they're working on with Centerbrook Architects, but they are not asking for anything other than their $10,000.
And they are applying for 3 different grants through the senators and Congressman Courtney. So they've got that big project retrofitting Bee and Thistle building. And they're also trying to work on the shoreline and that lower area of the property and make that more effective.
And they have three employees, a director of education and programs, as well as an administrative person.
Again, I'm not expressing an opinion. I don't know what it is. But I don't know that there's any rhyme or reason to why do we give $10,000 to one person and $20,000 to another person. Is it just because of what they ask for? And I do think it's at least relevant to me whether the organization is generally running profitably, with a positive net balance at the end of the year, which Roger Tory Peterson has for years.
Right.
And Lime Academy of Fine Arts is now. I mean, albeit with, I saw a $200,000 contribution from their endowment. So, but they have an endowment. So I'm just expressing sort of frustration with not having a rational basis for deciding how much money to give to these nonprofits.
Yeah.
Some of them are so small, such as the Historical Society and the Art Association. They have a small endowment compared to the Flo Grizz and Roger Tory. So I agree with you. How do we...
There's a distinction in my mind between a small organization that's performing a worthy service and is just struggling to break even, and a large organization that has a robust fundraising campaign and pretty good operating income. But
huge endowment.
Down there, let's go ask them for money, which is okay if that's what we want to do.
But as has been said, the town supports it. It makes it easier for them to go out and ask for the money. But it's a matter of how much support has to come from the town.
And that's it. But
that's
a
5,000,
basis
10,000.
But what is the number?
Right. Whereas the Historical Society, the 8,500 is a third of their budget.
Right. And we don't have a paid staff
for the town of Old Lyme.
Exactly. No, so they don't have any employees that I'm aware of.
No. And their fundraising capabilities.
Everything goes right back into what they're doing in that. Whereas there's people here that are advocating for these, for the grants, for everything. It's their job to go get money from places. So I agree.
I agree with you, though. Why will one of these organizations who has such a large endowment and fundraising development departments come to the town for $50,000? Is it because it's like, hey, we want $50,000? I don't know.
Well, maybe what we can do, because BJ's point is right, and the utility for the donations are myriad, right? Some are supporting grants, and some are actually supporting projects. But it's the selectmen's budget, so the Board of Selectmen should make recommendations if they'd like the help of Board of Finance to maybe take a stab at a more thoughtful policy. That's something that we can work collaboratively on.
Is there a what?
Current policy.
Is there a current policy?
No, that's BJ. Yeah, that's BJ's point.
Yeah, I think there has to be.
It's a little desultory right now. I mean, they're not huge numbers, but there needs to be some sort of reason to them.
And you want to be fair,
right?
Right.
I mean, even if we said we'll give $10,000 to each of them, unless there is a special occasion to deviate from that, at least we could say we're treating everybody the same.
Yeah.
Which you'd raise up a couple of these associations.
I mean, to that point, $10,000 to each of them, at least as we point out, the Historical Society, that's huge money for them versus, others where it's not. But it would be nice to see the justification for what they need.
As a percentage of $1 million budget, it ain't much.
Yeah. No.
But the $1 million budget probably reflects a reasonably solvent organization.
Right.
And, maybe by being more supportive of something like the Art Association and the Historical Society, we would be increasing their grants, which may allow them to do even more, because they are so small to begin with.
Maybe,
we could be lifting them out.
At least philosophically, and we can't get into this.
No, but they can.
With David, and it's for the Board of Selectmen. Policy matter. But you can ask the question, what is the contribution of this organization making to the town of Old Lyme, and how will our dollars enhance that contribution?
And Marie and I had this discussion, not that it matters, but some of these organizations are free and open to the public. Some are not.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
I mean, they did explain to us that they had a a way to if you go to the library but you want to go to the Flow Grizz, they'll give you a pass to go to the Flow Grizz at no cost for students. So they're going to talk about that for sure next week, and that will be part of their presentation.
I think it's only 2 passes, maybe 4 at a time, and they are similar to the Mystic Seaport.
And the aquarium. I mean, you're lucky if you can get your hands on them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and their point is all our grounds are open. But still, there's a lot of variables between each one, and when the selectmen come up with a formula, maybe it'll be more fair.
Yeah, let's do this. We'll task Tim and Martha and Matt to come up with something, or ask for help from the Board of Finance and put something simple together, because I think this year, especially with the Flow Grizz's very large request, this is going to spiral in my estimation. Yeah.
Yep.
Dave, do you want that done pronto, or?
Yeah, it's up to you. Well, you know what? I think this year we may do whatever we're going to do, because people are not expecting a change from last year, really, and that may be something that we don't want to surprise folks with. But we can say, look, this is the last year that we're doing it this way, and we're going to have a more thoughtful policy next year, so prepare yourselves.
That works.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay. All right. Tax abatements.
And before we go on to that, Dave, with that comment, are you suggesting that we want to hold this at least until we hear from the Flow Grizz, and then decide on all of them after we've...
The library is next. The library is next week, but they're...
Yeah.
Yep. No voting on that.
Yeah, Flow Grizz and the library, and those are sizable chunks of this line item, unfortunately. So, but if the selectmen say, "Hey, we've got an idea," and they run it by us next week, I mean, I'm happy to talk with others on the Board of Finance about putting the policy in place earlier. I just don't think, with everything on everybody's plate, that that's realistic. So,
I think that's a no. You're right. Yeah.
So
where does
tax
tax
abatements
and info fall?
Oh, it's not really a tab. In the past,
No, it's not.
I've given a ratio of 80% to Limewood and Ryfield and 100% to Hope for the 3 properties. We have received financials from Ryfield, who are awaiting financials from Limewood and Hope. But historically, with a letter and a receipt of the financials, we've approved these abatements at those levels. So we'll try to nag to get the other 2 in here, but we could say, subject to getting the financials from the other 2, we could repeat what we did last year or something else, whatever.
Tim, isn't there a form that they're supposed to submit that's like an official state form to ask for the...
I've seen a form. What I've seen is the financials from these organizations. I know that Melinda has talked about setting something up more repetitive, but of late it seems we've received these financial forms and a letter with it, but not a form that I'm...
Yeah, because I thought there was a problem. I mean, Hope was the one in the past that wouldn't give us anything.
They wouldn't respond at all.
And, we had a issue with one of the properties.
Well, 3 of them.
Was taxed.
Yeah.
And they didn't pay it. And we were told, well, that just drives the cost of the homeowner up and kind of...
Yeah.
But there's, they wouldn't give us anything. I mean, it was years that
And meanwhile, they spent a lot of money on the engineering of the Exit 70 project.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
And then at one point, wasn't a suggestion a couple of maybe 6, 7 years ago to just waive all tax on it no matter what? Because, I mean, the conversation took place, and I didn't know if it was ever resolved.
I don't know.
No.
I mean, you know, I know
Yeah,
we brought parity to Limewood, Ryfield Manor.
Mm-hmm. Right. But as far as Hope, it was stonewalled and sort of ignored.
Hope is the land only,
Right,
not the structure.
exactly.
Yeah.
and I thought prior to Melinda coming on board, didn't we have a conversation about it being accounted for, and if they ever sold it, which is unlikely, but if they were to ever sell it, that the town would get the taxes that it had abated or deferred. That rings a bell, but I don't think we memorialized anything formally.
Well, if these properties were sold to the private sector, then they would, of course, go back to being taxed. But I guess if they stay deed restricted, which I think Limewood and Ryfield are.
Yeah.
And
no, it was just the Hope. Yeah, it was just the Hope properties that I had a recollection about.
Hope is trying to get out of the 3 properties in Old Lyme. So,
do they continue to be on the delinquent taxpayer list for their property? The Hope.
The sum has not been paid.
Right.
But it's still there.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it should go away unless that's what we decide on.
And there's been kind of a swirling debate trying to find out if, you see, I think Walter had them on a automatic thing where they didn't have to do anything. And then when Melinda took over, she said you have to do the letter and the financials and so forth. And between that transition, there was they didn't submit something, and I think the tax kicked in, and then they paid one half, but not both halves. So that one half they feel should have been waived, or the whole thing, but they did pay the one half. So it's been a Mexican standoff about that. But they have been better the last few years with supplying stuff, and they did send an email and so forth, but we do need the financials.
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable ask as a contingency.
Is it possible that some of their information may still be in the finance director's email? Has it been gone through?
What's that again?
In the finance director's email, have we gone through to see if anything's been received since February 27th?
This problem's been ongoing for years.
I just didn't know if one had gotten their financials to it that way.
Yeah.
Well, I would hope we're checking that department's email.
Amy's looking at it, but yeah.
Yeah.
We'll keep nagging those two, but
yes, if somebody gets in contact with them directly, let's give them every chance to get us the financials. If that's the only contingency, it's not that big of a deal.
We would like to review your request, but we can't do so without the financials. And if you don't get them in by the end of the month, I guess that means you're not that interested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Certified.
Okay. All right, so what's being proposed for the overall budget, let's say that they do get those in, though, Tim, is 80% Limewood and Ryfield Manor abatement, and then Hope would be 100% of whatever tax would typically be due for the land for their projects. Okay?
Yep.
Great. All right, tidying up general government. The items that we didn't cover with Infotech and registrars, so treasurer, health department, and insurance. Yeah.
We had a conversation with Ron Nostick, who is the principal accountant for us from the
Yeah.
firm, and he indicated that, yes, indeed, it's a big increase. He said that the pay that they have to give to younger accountants coming on is quite high compared to the past. And so he said it all relates to salaries. He also said that in terms of, he said he recommended that we stay the course with the firm. He's retiring at the end of 23, so he's still on board. But he said, at this point, you shouldn't go out to bid for a new firm, but to get this audit this next fiscal year and then proceed to go to bid if you want to. So he said, yeah, it's ugly, but it's a fact of life, that $15,000 increase.
Phew.
You just you are in October or November of next year.
Yeah.
You want to go out and audit, how much it
Right.
won't get you the result of your audit.
Right.
Yeah, get the RFP in the fall and
Yeah.
stay with them for the audit for this year.
And Ron will be our auditor
See it through.
for this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's been
Yeah,
a,
because we usually we have had the audit in November timeframe in the past, but I think this year it was in the first quarter, which was a little tough.
seeing a lot of articles in financial reports that shortage of accountants right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it's not that you need to pay them more. They actually don't
Right.
exist.
Exactly.
That's a real problem. So, all right, with that, so the bottom line that I've got in my book is 243,159 for treasurer's office.
I'll make a motion for that.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? One vote tonight.
So far.
On a rail.
So far, yeah. Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of Treasurer's Office 243-159, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Health Department and Insurance.
Wasn't it the mosquito control that we were questioning?
Yeah, I spoke with Kurt, the proprietor of that, and he said he didn't supply that number. Patty up in Health said she didn't have anything to do with that number, so it's very mysterious. So he said, if you go up 1,000 just to cover, this whole thing is basically driven by how many times they spray. They plan to spray 25 times. I'm trying to find, let's see, get my notes on this. It's 201. All right, it's in Health.
He just wants to go up to 40,000?
Yeah.
Yeah. He went through it.
Into
Let's see. No, I don't know.
I don't get can't.
And he said, I don't know, just maybe nudge it a little bit, but it'll be pretty much the same as last year. And he says they've changed what they've done in the past, and he thinks that it's working quite well for O-line, putting less chemicals out and all that. So that's the recommendation.
You've got that right. Exactly.
So that's going to go down. So the 120,884 goes down by 16,600. So it becomes 104,284. That's what I'm getting.
Yep.
Motion.
Garvin.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of 104,284 for Health Department, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Great. Thank you. Insurance.
I think it was cybersecurity.
Item we were concerned with was the cyber insurance, and speaking with the agent. He cannot provide a number at this time, but, when we did it, we paid for 9 months, so if you do the math, that's about 25.5. With everything else, you might nudge it up a little bit beyond that, say 28 perhaps, hard to know. So we've, I think, complied with all the insurance stuff, so hopefully they like us.
Yeah, it's been skyrocketing. So if the 20 grand was for 9 months and you're proposing 28 for 12 months, probably fine. So that would raise the overall insurance number by $5,000 to 1082000. Anybody else get that number? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion or comment? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We didn't have any.
We didn't have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion for that number.
I'll second.
1082000.
I was hearing ghosts being on the phone. I apologize.
2,000?
Wishful thinking.
What is it again? 128?
1082.
1,082,000.
Yeah.
82,000.
All right. Any discussion, questions? Move to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Great. Okay. Harbor Management and Soundview Commission. Open space we're pushing until next week, but Kimberly and I had a conversation today, which was a good conversation that we'll preview in just a little bit. Harbor Management, they have a capital item as well, and so their capital item was $60,000 for Button Ball, which is kind of a contingent number for permitting and potentially a dock down by the Button Ball site. And my understanding from the conversations with Harbor Management are that they came to agreement yesterday, and Tim, you probably have more clarity on this, with Open Space in terms of their agreement and how they're going to share, and that was confirmed with our conversation, Kimberly's and my conversation with Open Space today as well. So they had $60,000 in capital. When you guys talked about capital, was that kept in the budget?
We talked about the likelihood of the project actually being completed in the manner they were looking at doing it. We had heard, and they were probably going to need money for planning and permitting. And so what we did, what we thought of was putting that 60 down to 20 for this year and putting the 60,000 in next year. Giving them the money to do permitting and planning and perhaps some split rail fencing, some signage down there, and then really have an engineer look at it to plan it out properly.
So they've increased in their operating budget contracted services from $1,200 to $5,000.
Yeah.
In my conversations with Sloan Dannenauer and then Mike Presti, they said that the discussions at the commission were that 5,000 would also cover some permitting and legal. So there may be some double budgeting. And
the other thing in capital under Harbor Management was the survey of the Black Hall 4 Mile and Calves Island field that they put $10,000 in there.
And Calves?
Yeah.
So we thought that was kind of where maybe the double booking was with the 5,000 with the increase in the operating budget. So, the survey, how much was needed for that survey? and where should it go?
Right. The surveys are not inexpensive.
Right.
And they are going to be doing more in the future. And if it's related to a project, I think it should be part of a project cost. But some of this may be simply ongoing as they kind of expand their purview a little bit and activity from what they've done in the past, is my understanding. So maybe what we can do is I can have another conversation with these guys about their capital needs, and in the meantime, we can keep the $5,000 in their operating budget, and maybe approve their operating budget tonight, and then clarify capital for next week.
Makes sense.
That makes sense.
So I'll entertain a motion for the 6738 for harbor
So moved.
management.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Abstentions, motion carries. Great. Down Review Commission. That also has a capital component, but looking at the operating budget first, I had a conversation with Frank Papalardo about their thinking and the increases here. Their contracted services, as we go down, I think it's page 4, their contracted services has gone up very significantly, and that's based on the conversations that they've had with their contractor for the porta potties that they've got in the summertime. So those costs have gone up fairly significantly. What I didn't ask, Frank, is whether they have bid those out or not. So
You're talking about the trailers or the portable toilets?
no, this is in their contracted services for their proposed operating budget, Andy.
Yep.
This would assume the rental and cleaning of those bathrooms for the summer. So the
blue toilets or the trailer?
The blue toilets.
Okay. So then the question, and I'm reading Andy's mind right now, why are we having the blue porta potties if we're also having a porta potty trailer?
We can't decide until we figure the capital, right?
Because if the porta potty trailer doesn't show up, right, or if it gets turned down, then we're back to the blue porta potties.
Well, that's fine, but in order to do a budget, we shouldn't be paying for two alternative solutions to the same problem.
In looking at the capital budget today, we were wondering if we could afford $103,000 to, I don't know if that's buying or renting. For the trailer. Plus, if you look at the last line of the Soundview Commission budget, it's $2,000 to operate.
Yeah.
So you're talking $140,000, plus you're increasing, it's like...
A lot of money.
Build some bathrooms.
Right.
Now, to me, that seems like a lot of money. And at the end of the season, you have to drain the water out of them.
Winterize it.
Are you going to leave it down there where it could get hit by a nor'easter and float away?
Then you have other problems.
Trailer them up to Public Works for store. It's just.
I have no personal knowledge of the problems that the porta potty.
No, but
it is an expensive solution to go up to trailers and.
I think I'd rather see the porta potties floating around and somebody else. I don't live down there, but.
Yeah. So just to be clear, what Frank had presented for budget in the fall. What's?
Martha's trying to find.
I'm sorry.
It's 202, boards and commissions.
Yeah. So
Then there's
what Frank?
Then Frank
What-
gave us a 17-inch, 14-inch page with details of the porta potty, the trailer.
Yeah,
And, it's $76,000 to purchase it. It's $15,000 in utilities to cool it.
If we're lucky.
And then there's pump outs and all sorts of stuff. So, long story short,
No.
I don't think we can buy this trailer thing. I think we have to stay with the porta potties another year. We're going to have a hell of a budget this year, and it would be very nice. But then, with an expensive unit like that, how are you going to monitor it? You'd probably have to have a staff person there the whole time.
And camera.
And security.
I mean, those porta potties are being.
Yeah.
You can imagine what would happen.
Let's put it up in the
Ranger,
bus
great
station
idea.
instead.
yeah. So here's what happens in the two scenarios, though.
Okay.
So if we do not purchase the porta potties, and I'll give you high-level numbers based on what Frank had shared with me and shared with the capital capital committee. If we don't do the porta potties, then the 32.3 at the bottom there, the last line item for FD trailer operating costs, that goes away.
Right.
If we are to buy the trailers, the cost of the trailers is $103,300, and then ongoing operating costs are the $32.3.
Right.
So those are the two scenarios. So for purposes for tonight, if people are not in favor of the trailers, then the $58,965 goes down by the $32,300.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Maybe more.
No
What's
toilet
the
paper.
$500 for golf carts?
Yeah, right.
Those are the license plates. You're registering golf carts.
Yeah.
Right. Signage and license plates.
And they do get revenue for them.
Okay. So they're purchasing all license plates to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Kim, we had discussed taking out that 1220 though for the planters.
That's capital, right?
Yes.
That's
We can talk about that.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that in just a minute. So the figure that I'm getting for the operating budget that I'll entertain a motion for is looks like 26,665. Are the folks getting that number?
Yep.
I'll make
Okay.
that motion.
I'll second.
Great. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, 26,665 for Soundview Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Great, the motion carries. Okay. Now on the other capital items, I've got...
Or Hart, just while we're on.
Oh, I'm looking.
The total is 3971, comprised of benches that are replacing benches that have deteriorated. There are 5 benches, $402 a piece, plus some transportation for the benches themselves. So that's $2,000 plus $750 for transportation. Planters, 3 medium round planters at $312, and then mounting kits as well. The total there is about $1,200 for the planters with the mounting kits.
Got it.
We had reviewed that we were going to take those back up to this year, because they have planters.
Again, I'm sorry, what did Martha say?
She's saying that they had talked at their reviews, they would take the planters out because they already have some. We figured maybe these planters for next to the new trailer.
For the dog.
They have, if you're looking at these 2 benches to the left of the pavilion, and the 2 benches to the right of the below, and they have the main planter around the flagpole. And I don't know where he was going to put these, but we thought that for 1 year, we could possibly
Without.
You want to push them out to the next year?
Really annoying.
Take them out.
You can weigh in, but that was our initial discussion that day with Nicole, so.
Okay, sounds good.
At the capital committee, we also talked about the gazebo replacement at Soundview, and we talked about taking that out.
Permanently.
Yeah, not just bump it out, but
Delete.
delete it. They've been without a gazebo for years. It used to be for the parking lot attendant
They don't
to
use.
get out of the sun, but they don't have a parking lot attendant anymore.
Well, they both do utilize it, they have the tents now.
But
Tent's cheaper.
used to actually collect the money, get the tickets, whereas now they're there to monitor
Yeah.
because of the kiosks. You know, they used to have to sit in one place. So.
Well, what Frank would say is this is a perennial request, and the gazebo used to be down there, and Ed moved it, and then the next summer it never came back. That's my recollection of what Frank brings up every year.
It just loses more spindles every year till it's no good.
But I like Matt's idea of a pop-up tent that gets.
I do too.
I mean, it'll get nailed down, it'll blow away. That's the problem with pop-up tents. It'll, get.
Plus in high water, it can float.
It goes back to our.
Potties. Are we also taking out the porta potties?
We're seeing that.
Yeah,
But, yeah,
those are gone.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's not porta potties, that's a trailer.
The trailer.
We took it out. Gone.
So we'll leave the benches.
That's nice.
Get rid of the 1,220.
Okay.
Right.
And the 6,500.
We had to take two away last year, they were perfect.
Okay, so that's on the capital side. We'll get another bite at that apple next week. But sounds like it's pretty well settled, so that's good. And then final item for submissions is open space that we're going to push until next week, but we did have a conversation today that was a good conversation, and they're going to be clarifying some requests on the capital side as well for button ball. And on the operating side, there were a couple of items that we're going to revise and bring to folks next week. Kimberly, I don't have my notes in front of me, but this year it was Ferry Landing. That's right, the Ferry Landing herbicide and mowing.
Yep. So there's $7,000 that's in their budget for this current year that they can use to get that project started. They're then requesting $22,000.
It's all capital.
Pending, for operating, or for no.
This is in the operating budget.
This is in the operating budget. Yeah. So then $22,000.
Yep.
In the 23-24 year to continue that project. And then they'll be requesting another $12,000 so this is for dealing with the Phragmites in Eklund Pond. That's a process of mowing them down, applying some herbicides, and mowing them down again, and the majority of the cost would be incurred in this upcoming year.
So operating budget,
the same.
the number we have in the book is 23,264?
Right.
That's not what it's going to be.
That's not what it's going to be, okay.
So next.
Yeah, so they had elected a new chair beginning of February, and so he was just getting up to speed with the budget and everything. They had a big changeover in his single position. So I think this budget is, as you'll see, exactly what was here last year. I sent it to Michelle. He sent me their narrative. I sent it to Michelle. Send it out electronically, or she can print it out to bring next week.
It's on for next week, right?
Yeah.
On the calendar for next week? Okay.
Yeah, if you'd like, I can send everyone that narrative.
Send it to me electronically and read it before the meeting.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is this, we talked about this a little bit at the capital meeting, the line here, open space contracted services file storage. Is this one of the boards or commissions, Tim, and David, that's requesting that we create space? Okay.
Yep.
And we talked at the capital meeting today that, again, policy, if that's something that we want, and we probably should make available, what would be, and it may vary by board and commission, what would go there, and do we go back and put stuff there, or we just move forward and put stuff there? And if we're going to go back, who's going to do it, who's going to pay for that? For scanning.
It seems like there needs to be some sort of needs assessment.
I think back stuff, from what I understand, some of it's in boxes in commission members' homes. But it's a matter of how much of that needs to be available to the general public. Is it?
They have to redo this, because if it's votes, it has votes and things that determine usage.
Well, their minutes should be on the town website anyway. And that should be things, by legally,
why do we
those
have to?
things. But if there are, that should be uploaded anyway. If they're just looking for a storage space for their work papers, that's a whole different.
It could be a lot of junk.
That could be.
More, like, engineering reports and things like that they have done.
Yep.
Certainly.
I mean, I think things like that would be considered town assets.
Well, yeah, town's paid for them. They should be not in somebody's box.
Not in someone's basement. Yeah.
They've got to go through their boxes.
Yeah.
Determine
And,
how much stuff is there.
if there's stuff from 20 years ago that may not be relevant anymore, or there may be one piece of paper in the file that's this thick that is relevant, and not scanning the whole thing and having storage space for that, because certainly that's where it belongs. And I know when we weren't in the town hall, when town hall was being renovated, there was, Frank had a whole crew of people scanning stuff all summer long.
Yeah, she had a kind of a quality control there of people who knew what they were looking for. If you talk to Harbor Management with 9 members and say, give me all your stuff, you could be in for a...
Yeah, but I think this was something that we discussed last year when this line item came up, was that there needed to be some sort of needs assessment done so that we understand what's out there and what's needed as far as storage.
And then how to do it.
And how to do it.
Because it comes into what we're dealing with the police department.
Right.
Keeping policy. Right. In a perfect world, every board and commission would have a secretary who would have singular charge of all of the minutes of the meetings and of any documents or reports that are kind of formal to the meeting. The individual members can keep their own notes and do whatever they want with them.
Exactly.
But there should be, committee or commission records that are stored in town hall.
In an archive
And
of some
legally,
sort.
things like agendas and minutes have to be, and they have a clerk that we pay, and that's the person that should be responsible for that. And then contracts.
All of this formal stuff, but it should be in town hall and not reside at somebody's home for a whole bunch of reasons, including turnover in the members of the committee.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like the starting point would be understanding what's out there.
Basically, you develop policy or to ask them how many records do they actually think they have to each commission that they're sitting out there.
You might
you can't make a decision about what kind of electronic storage to buy.
The $2,500 which triggered this conversation, I'm glad it did, but we don't know what the money's going to be spent on, so it's hard
So Dave and I did talk...
With $10 there, because it's a good line item.
Yeah, Dave and I did talk with Greg about this item. So they haven't used their budget from this year because they didn't really get any sort of decision back on, and he didn't feel like he wanted to just go open a Dropbox.
It's not where it belongs.
So, we sort of discussed with them that, we wouldn't put that $2,500 in carryover, but they do have a need for some sort of physical storage. He said that, they came into town hall and found that they used to have a filing cabinet here, and they came in one day and found all their files on the floor. so they've put that in there more as a needing physical storage for documents that have been removed from a filing
We need
cabinet.
a storage unit if we're going to have each commission having a lot of stuff.
Right.
It's got to be digitized.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, again, it goes back to needing some sort of needs assessment for what's out there.
No available space
Well,
in this building?
I'd say you might find a little space for somebody, but it can't be a permanent thing because if you have, 15 or 20 boards, commissions, committees, it'll be an avalanche of paper.
Well, but if there were 20 filing cabinets, there
No.
was no space for that.
No.
So, even in my office, we have a copy machine with a scanner.
Right.
And I can hit a button, says Andy, and it goes to my scan folder, and then I can do whatever I want with it from there. I would think every board commission could be set up with, on our copy machine upstairs,
We have to provide it here, right?
with help from our IT committee,
There we go. Yep.
storage space, but then it does have to be managed or it'll be a mess. It has to be organized so people can find it. And that, I wouldn't think you'd leave that up to the board or commission. It's going to have to be somebody.
And what you are talking about is the new generation of you youngsters that keep electronic files.
Right.
As opposed to the old folks who still have paper files.
File cabinet, but it holds my computer. I put my laptop on it at work, and that's what my file cabinet does.
Fair enough, if we want to go to electronic records.
That's what we tried to do when we moved out of town hall, came back in.
This sounds like Tom Meyer's 69th job.
Right, perfect.
Yeah.
We'll tell them next week.
And, then do you put this line item in every board and commission's budget, or does it go in the IT budget and sit and live there?
But we can't agree on a number until we know.
We're not
what the
going to know a
system
number.
is gonna be.
We're not going to know.
We can put a number, $100 in to hold the line open if you want, but.
We're probably not going to know.
But it goes to Kim's point of just a needs assessment for because it will become, if it's physical, it'll be a dumping ground. No one will ever purge anything. And, the same can be true for computer files if you're not careful. But these boards and commissions, they turn over with some regularity. So there's got to be some person in or a role whose responsibility this is on an ongoing basis to manage it. So it's more complicated than, unfortunately, the thought is. That's for sure. All right. So I guess we're not going to solve that problem tonight, but it is a topic that has some import, I think. And most importantly, because I do think there are a fair amount of boards and commissions that don't have any physical place for important documents, and that may be a good starting point if it's not an individual file cabinet for everybody. Hey, give us the most important things that you're hanging on to and make that a task for people so that we don't have stuff in Amanda Blair's, half of it's in Amanda Blair's basement is what Greg said today, and he's got a quarter of the files, it's just kind of messy. But again, I don't think it's the purview of the Board of Finance, to solve that tonight, but to raise it with the selectmen. So, okay. Sanitation.
All right, we'll do a handout here.
Didn't we discuss last week, Rob, doing this as this?
Yeah.
And
We'll find out.
All right, I think we know that the town has two contracts. The original contract 4 years ago was to take your refuse and your recycling from your house or business, in some cases, to used to be Essex transfer station, at which point it would then be trucked to Hartford and disposed of. So this contract, which is expiring on June 30th, needs to be renewed, And you can see up above, CWPM back 4 years ago was the low bidder at $520,000, and All Waste $735,000, Willie Waste at $809,000, and Solari at $825,000. And they had increases per year. So the town selected CWPM, which I think we've all been pretty pleased with that service. I think the equipment is up to date, and they more or less carry on in the spirit of YUCNet, and going to getting into places where it's not, you don't have to put the can out on a town road in some cases. So in talking with Jason Manafort about a renewal, I think I reported last month or last week, I forget. He was talking 5%. He's offering 4%, and so I tried to map out what that would be over the future years, upping from 568 to 590, and you can read across the page. And you can see below that what the year-to-year increase is over the time. I think when we met with Jason and his folks here at Town Hall, they pointed out that they really stretched for the business. Either that or the competition wasn't very astute and they overpriced. And then if they bought the equipment, that had to be a big number as well. So obviously costs have been increasing with fuel and all that stuff. So I think we have to keep in mind that this contract's to get the stuff to the central point. That's no longer Mira over in Old Saybrook. The trash goes to New London and the recycling goes to Brasra instead of that Mira location. So then the second contract deals with taking the materials to the burn plant or to Willie Waste. And I think it's Casella is the successor to Willimantic Waste. So if we were to not use CWPM and get a different hauler to do this contract, it'd be a little awkward having two different organizations handling our trash. Also, Jason brought up the fact that we do have Casella take things from our transfer station to be disposed of, the bulky waste, and there are certain larger recycling items that people take to the transfer station. And he would be happy to give us a price on that at a very favorable rate, I'm sure. So that's where we are in terms of the conversation, and they would love to continue with us. And this is, the contract does specify a 4-year option, which is not required, but I think one of the big things would be if we left and went to another place. Number one, it seemed like the competition 4 years ago was substantially more, and they're not increasing to a higher level. They're just continuing, albeit at a higher percentage, 1% more than they did before. So that's...
It's interesting, Tim. If you look at what they want in 2027 is less than the competition in 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
The competitive prices look good, but Tim, and again, I'm feeling stupid. What's the second CWPM contract?
That's the one. Okay, let's back up. When we first started, we would take all our recycling and garbage to the Essex destination and then Mira would transport it to Hartford. Well, since we left that operation because we went from, now it's about $118 a ton, we went with CWPM at $90 a ton on waste. The recycling at Mira was taken for no cost, and they would get whatever material credit was offered. So the way it's structured, we pay $140 a ton for the recycling, and then whatever credit we receive is subtracted from that, and hopefully it would be less than the $90. Well, it started out in July where our credit was about $75 a ton, and a couple of months ago it was $2 a ton. The world market for recycling products has really been in bad shape. So luckily it's about 25% of our waste stream. We want to do better with recycling.
But my question really
I can't follow this, right?
What are the dollars attached to the second contract?
So the second contract takes it where the first contract ends. So in this case, the trash goes to New London, and recycling goes to Osborne.
They're not on here.
We have dollars attached to the second contract?
I can show you from July what we have been paying, but it's $90 a ton.
Based on the ton. Okay, so it is whatever it is today, and they're offering to renew that contract at the same dollar amount per ton, or what?
Well, the first fee it's not based on tonnage. It's just to take it from your house to a place.
We have those numbers.
Yeah, the second contract, garbage is $90 or $91 next year, and the recycling's based on the formula of 140 less the credit, which when market was good for recycling was even less than $90, but now it's close to $130 or something. So that'll change. If we were to not renew the first contract with CWPM and get another outfit, I guess they would have to transport it to New London, as they are doing now.
Yeah.
Right, but again, all I'm asking is the second. I understand that the recycling number varies with the market, but the transportation from New London is a fixed price per ton. And have they agreed to that?
That stays. Yeah, that stays. It goes up $1 a year for 4 years.
So that's
on the garbage.
Okay.
Right. And then the other is this fluctuating.
Right. All right. So they're going to give us a contract for the second contract fixed today at $90, going up $1 a year. A little more than 1%. That's fine to me.
Yeah, let's see. I guess
Contract last year.
So it's not expiring.
That one already was signed last July.
Okay.
So I didn't know that.
I was confused too.
So all right, we have three lines in our budget.
Right.
Municipal refuse collection, all right?
Yep.
Top line is municipal refuse collection, and we had in our budget book the 568,218, which is our current year. That number would really have, if we were to go with this, that would have to change to 591.
Yep, divided by 12 monthly, yeah.
591.
For the year.
The next line is single stream recycling, which last week I wrote in here $135,000.
So did I.
Me too.
Yeah.
So what is that 135?
Where do we?
BJ's, I'm at the same place he is.
I am.
Okay.
All right, that's our single stream recycling. Where is that the fee that we think we have to pay to get rid of our single stream recycling?
From July to present, from July to February, we spent $175,000 on the trash being taken away.
Okay, but all right, what line on our budget is that 175 in, Tim? 3 lines. Is that the last line, the former Mira line is now CWPM?
Single stream with nothing there.
Right.
Where's my?
Added 135. And then,
Just so it's easier, I think, for me anyway, if we're looking at the lines in our budget.
right,
then you can tell us
we
what,
can't apply, it's missing,
It's right here, here. Look on, it's in your report.
All right,
So it's just these three,
yeah.
so this,
The bottom two lines are the second contract. The top line is the...
right.
but how much,
The
how
top
much are
line will go
those?
to 591 if we agree to
Right,
this extension.
But, yeah, but the second one is not a fixed price. It's based on...
we have an estimate, can we sort of,
All I can tell you is we've only been with them from July, and so from July through February, the trash is $175,000.
All right, but the second line, Tim, says single stream recycling.
We got to combine line 2 and 3 together.
you gave us
Well,
a number of $135,000 last week.
right, last week you told us
Yeah.
to put 135.
Yeah.
This,
And then 300 on the third line.
right,
Just trying to get back.
that down.
Right,
So last week you said to go here and here, because single stream was gonna cost us more.
We weren't
I don't-
for single stream, and
Because we're only
we are now.
72,000.
No, single stream is second line. Single stream is the second line. You said to go to 135, because as of
right.
whatever date it was, we were
Okay.
already at 75, and we haven't finished the year. So you said, let's go to 135 for next year.
Okay, all right.
Stream is a
And
line item
this
this year.
you said to bring down,
To 300.
It's not in this year's budget.
because as of,
Me too.
somebody might have
Is
a January date.
Right.
What we
Well,
are.
those were the numbers that I had in the book at February 14th that Tim and Nicole had given us, the 135 and the 300, because they needed to be broken apart.
Plus 591 for
Right.
the next year,
The next
for
contract.
24.
We've got 8 months under our belt. 6, 8.
Crazy.
Take 175, and then we divide that by 8. Well, see, it's seasonal too. That's, just do it that way.
Yeah, that's fine.
Divide by 8 times 12. That'd be 262 on the trash, so that's,
We said
Wait,
300.
we said
Is that
300.
the third line down? The
Yeah.
open arrow line?
So
right.
You said 300 last week to
Feel more-
cover us a little bit.
I feel more comfortable
Yeah.
with the 300
Yeah.
because it is seasonal.
Yeah, because we're going through the lean month now.
Right.
That's that month.
And 130.
And then the recycling, we have about 73,000, divided by 8,
Again,
Recycling is charge or credit?
It's a charge now.
all the charge.
about 100,
So that's why we said
109.
The
135.
135, again, you went through the lean period, that
We did all
probably,
that.
I got one, if you do that simple thing, it's 110.
yeah.
So
Well-
I think
I
those are
put
still valid.
135 in there, is what we were told last week on that line, because the price, that's the line that the price of the recycled might go up.
Right.
Per ton cost could go up.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting pounded on
Right.
the
So that's
recycling
over,
rate
right?
because the credit's so low.
Yeah.
Want us to
And
stop
if that
recycling?
improves, because,
All right, I can take this back now. You're good?
yeah,
1,026,000.
when we started in January, we got $92.50 for the recycling, which brought the net cost down to $47.
Right.
But the worst month, we got $2, so we're paying $138 essentially. So we're hoping, and even those guys are saying, this is terrible, it's got to get better, but not yet.
Well, we're better off to tell people to throw their stuff in the trash and not the recycle bin.
Practically,
Exactly.
Probably weighs less on the,
practically.
Are there
by
then
mass, not volume.
three services, three charges? One, to pick up the household garbage and bring it to New London. Second, to bring it from New London to wherever. And 3, for the recycling.
The trucks, we have 2 different pickups, of course. So during your regular household pickup, the garbage truck goes to New London. The recycling truck the next day takes it and goes to Basra.
Okay.
That's the first contract.
Okay, so the first contract includes picking up the recycling and bringing it to Basra.
Correct. And the second one has it going from New London to the burn plant and from Basra to Willie Waste and disposing of it, because you're charged to burn it up, you're charged to, we should get credits, but you're charged to take it to the end destination. So it's a little confusing, but
So the three...
But those are just transportation, and there's also a recycling charge, no?
Well, we don't pay a different fee to the burn plant, nor do we pay a fee to Willimantic Waste for the recycling. Our fee just gets rid of it.
And the third part must be the materials we take to the transfer station.
Hauling.
Those have to be hauled away.
Yeah.
Is that
Not your garbage. Right.
So the third line is for the transfer station?
Transfer station's under a totally separate budget.
So forget about the transfer station.
Yeah, but
It's down below.
they would be willing to sharpen a pencil on that portion of our waste stream, but that's a little confusing right now.
So I understand the three line items, and I understand the cushion given the methodology that you used, Tim, of taking what we've paid to date, divide by 8, multiply by 12, plus add a cushion, right?
Yeah.
Is everybody else clear now on these three line items and where the 135 and the 300 came from?
No.
And what they represent?
In your words, Dave, would you just go over the three line items?
Yeah, so the municipal, my understanding, the municipal refuse collection is taking it from people's house, both recycling as well as garbage, to two different sites. One site for garbage and one site for recycling. The second line item, single stream recycling, will be taking the recycling from Basra to Willimantic, where it will be disposed of. The third line item is for garbage, where it goes from New London to get burned in Lisbon, I think, or wherever it is.
Thank you.
That's my understanding.
Yep.
Correct.
That helped. Thank you.
So then it circles back around to the fact that we've got $1 million that, is a contract potentially for another 4 years, I guess. What helps me certainly is seeing what the bids were from 4 years ago. Nobody's going to be less than they were 4 years ago, I can't imagine. If they were that high then, they're going to be at least that high again.
I was around 1% from 5.
Right.
Yeah.
In a week, it went down 1%, which I find
I
encouraging.
guess I feel a little bit better about not putting it out to bid.
And can we avoid putting it out to bid under our bid policy? It's a little late to do that, probably. But
we won't. Yeah, we have the bid policy.
Under the bid policy, does the Board of Selectmen have the power to?
Yeah,
yes, they do. They can waive it.
We could vote to do it.
So,
Yep.
I think what Andy just said and what the numbers are clear, right? We've got a good price, even with the 4% annual increase. The question is whether that's the best deal we can get. And I think you said that they started with a 5% annual increase, Tim?
Yeah, that was the initial.
You talked to them and you said, okay, I'll go with a 4% annual increase?
Yeah, it came down 1%.
And so the question, as a negotiator, will we put down another %?
We started at 3%, and he said, well, I was going to charge over 6, but, it's coming to the middle. So I think it would be tough to try to eke out another 0.5%.
Based on these numbers of 4 years, speaks volume.
Well, but so, you were the one with the negotiation, and based on that meeting, you were highly skeptical that he'll come down to 3, even if we jump up and down.
It's $7,000.
I am.
That's all?
Yeah, let's know.
Okay.
On that contract,
That's a variance.
right?
Let's make it
It's not even,
easy
it's
and
6.
say, spend the 7%.
I would say, I don't know if anybody here thinks that they haven't done a good job with their...
No, they have.
I think they're great.
It's just you don't want to get caught by somebody else saying, you know, the new company, Casella, that owns Willie Waste, we would have done it for 5. No, that was Willie Waste.
That's the wonderful thing about FOI.
Yeah.
But there again, we've got your old quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not dissatisfied.
We're underneath all those quotes.
Tim, are we held to this 4-year contract?
No.
Or could we, in another year or two, go out for bid just to see?
I have to read and escape. I think it's probably for performance and things. I think.
You're stuck for 4 years, it's fine.
I don't think.
Or if you, and that might be a good thing, because
Yeah,
who
we
knows
might
what's
be
going to happen?
protected.
We might.
Would we
Well,
be
Here's another point. I was talking to Jason about Essex. We know Mira is not long for this world, and the Essex transfer station, he was talking to Needleman about perhaps using that as a transfer station for the towns south of Middletown, because if that were to close, they'd all have to get it up to Hartford themselves. So if this became the center for all our stuff, either going to the burn plant or to recycling, we might shorten our commute to Essex again. It's a little longer to go to New London and Basra. These guys are big players. They do rail, they do it all. I don't really appreciate the scope of the operation, but I think it's pretty big. So they have the economy of scales, and they live in town, a number of them, and as did the DeVivos, you know, they lived in the beach area. So I think the reliability is good. The equipment's maintained well. Not to take anything away from Solari, but that's a pretty young company, and particularly to bite off a contract like this.
Well, he was also $300,000 higher.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
I can't see that any of those are going to be less than what you're talking about now.
Hard to say.
Well,
obviously, CWPM really stretched for the business, and that was good for us.
Tim, a question on the other service. So if we look down at transfer station, the contract you're talking about is the transfer station contracted services for $140,000. That's with Willie Waste, and that's to move stuff from our transfer station to wherever it ends up?
I think so. There may be, say, for instance, like waste oil and other things that may be in there too.
It's
primarily
what I'm talking about is in that number, and that's what you're talking about possibly being as CWPM.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to Don Ruddy about the composition and so forth, and because he had us raise our fees a good bit. We did the month or so ago, because the rates have gone up pretty smartly to transport stuff out.
Yep.
So if these guys could come in and save, I don't know how much, but if they could get it 10 or 15% off of this stuff, that would be another savings for us.
Is that a contract that we have with Willie Waste, or is this kind of a forever?
I'm not aware. I don't know. I'll have to ask Don, because I don't recall seeing a contract with them. They come and take those containers are owned by Willie Waste would take it. I remember before, all our recycling went to the bins in the transfer station, and Willie towed them up to Mansfield. So it's there probably could be some economy here, hopefully. But the selectmen have not actually voted on this. This is just, I just talked to them yesterday to get this, so.
So my only kind of, and I'm negotiating nevertheless, would be whether we'd be disappointed if the inflation rate really does come down, as we've been promised by Mr. Powell, in the next couple of years, down to 2%. In other words, a 4% annual increase is fine if inflation is 4%, it's less fine if inflation is 2%. So some contracts obviously have an inflation factor that is the lesser of the strike price here, 4%, or the cost of living increase.
CPI.
Yeah. Do you think he'd agree to that?
I don't know.
There again, though, the price of his fuel.
Say what?
The price of his fuel fluctuates so much too, you know?
Yeah.
And yet he's got a set rate for you here.
Yeah, his health insurance for his employees, just like ours,
down.
down, it's not going down.
Well, he said that he uses about, 40 gallons per truck per day, times 2, so that would be 80 gallons, times 260 days. So he cooks through about 21,000 gallons of fuel.
Times $5.
Yeah, when it
Is it
doubles
diesel
from,
or is it gas?
Yeah.
230, which is probably his first contract.
Well, it goes all over the place. I mean,
Of
you
course it
can
does.
modify, obviously, a CPI formula to take into account special circumstances like fuel. I'm asking the question, and it is whether the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen want to pursue it.
I'm happy with the 7.
I guess you get your crystal ball and say, is inflation going to stay modest?
Well, my suggestion is a no-lose situation for us, because it's the lesser of the CPI or 4%.
Yeah, I guess CPI is comprised of so many other things, though. This guy's worried about health insurance, gas, tires, so do you have a separate bucket for just inflation for the cost that he or she is affected by,
We could look at his budget the way we did with our prior guy.
Yeah.
If you
With Gary?
Yeah.
We were the only place.
So
he was
I guess,
The increases are, $24,000 a year. It's not enormous.
yeah. I guess the question for Board of Finance just procedurally is we can, now that we've got kind of our arms around the components here, if we want to give it another week to see whether there are other conversations that the selectmen were just apprised of this yesterday, is what Tim just said. So do we want to give them as a group another week to think about the numbers and think about process and conversations with others? We could vote tonight based on the numbers that Tim has presented.
I think based on the fact that it was 1 week and we've come down 1%, it might be worth waiting another week to have more discussion.
Well, but also from a process standpoint, Dave, Tim did say that the Board of Selectmen hasn't voted on this, so maybe we can let the Selectmen make a decision, and if they come back to us, they can do it.
Yep.
We do it.
Okay.
Or we vote for the money and let them figure it out.
Okay.
We've had the discussion. I think let them have the discussion and wait till next week and see what they do.
Yeah. Okay. I think generally I agree with the approach of having the selectmen come to a vote and a consensus or unanimity on things, and then bring it to us. So I think that's what we can do here. But just numbers so that I've got them in my book. Tim, can you confirm the first line item for municipal refuse again? It was 591.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's literally 590,946.
590.
Yes, 590,946.
So 590.
591, and you'll be pretty close.
Okay, thank you.
Leave it $4 for that extra recycle.
I don't know about that.
And then 135, and then
300.
and then 300. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. And then the final item that I've got here, I talked with Jerry Baker a little bit this past week, and tomorrow she's getting refined numbers for the senior center that she'd like to take the time to present to us next week. And I'm going to help her with her presentation to make sure that it's punchy, but covers everything that's required. They are updated numbers from the last presentation that we saw, but I'm going to ask that we do push that till next week as well.
Dave, one suggestion I have, and I think Tim and I have talked about it, is, and maybe it's changed since she's spoken to me, that she wants the cost associated with finding another facility and paying for the rental on that space to be included in her operating budget for the senior center and not the building budget. My feeling is it should be included with the other costs of the building project. I don't know if you've had that discussion with her.
No, that's new to me. I haven't had that discussion with her.
She's very firm on no way is that going to be included in the costs associated with the building project, and it should be operating. And I said, well, without this building project, you wouldn't have these costs, and we are approving operating costs. And after talking to some other people locally who had some experience with projects like this, they said, of course, it always went with the building budget. So if you would let us know on that.
I guess we'd have to overlay.
You don't want to spike the operating budget.
Right.
Because let's say it's $50,000 a year for 2 years to relocate them, that spikes the operating budget.
Mm-hmm. She doesn't want it in the building cost because she wants to keep the cost down.
Yeah, but I think that I'll talk to her about it because I think that's understandable. It hasn't been part of the project cost to date, but neither have there have been a number of items that have cropped up as people think about things, and I think it's understandable unless the new numbers are like twice what we just already saw, 2 months ago. So, but I agree with you. I think if it's project related, which this rental cost would be generated by the project, it should be part of the project. Yeah.
Also look at the senior center operating budget and say, okay, if they go dark in December for 6 months next year, does that drop that budget significantly?
And you can make an
adjustment the other way.
Right. So. I don't think it's going to change it substantially, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if they are contemplating a temporary location, it doesn't really affect the operating budget in terms of salaries and what truly drives the budget. So, all right, but I will be talking with her after she gets her numbers and has her meeting tomorrow.
Well, she probably has to appreciate the difference between the construction budget and the project.
Of course.
Yeah.
So just an FYI.
Okay. All right. That is it under other business that's been laid out.
Wait a minute. We do. The Board of Selectmen voted to recommend a $15,000 amount for unforeseen things for the balance of the fiscal year. Now, that may not be that high, but pick a number. But we have the Mystic Air, and who knows what might come along in the next couple of months. So, at the moment, we're not able to pay the bill.
You're talking about the senior center?
Yeah, the senior center project.
Yeah. So we should take care of that since it's part of it.
You can pick a number, but it shouldn't be. I think the bills are going to be about $2,500 for the Mystic, and who knows what things will pop up.
And there was some discussion about sharing that with Lime.
Oh, that's understood.
So pay the bill.
Of course. So do we pay it? And
yeah, just like normal.
They give us.
I know, but we need to.
Tim, what other things?
What?
19.5.
19.5 what?
For what?
Up to 19,500.
Up to 19,500.
No, we probably only need 10 to 15 to get us to the end of the year. We don't know of anything pending beyond this Mystic, but just in case.
I mean, just thinking about the fact that you can't do 2 special allocations in a
If you do twice,
has to go.
You're going to town meeting.
Yeah, you got to.
Make it the 19.5.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
What's the amount?
Made a motion for 19.5.
That much?
That's what we said.
We may not use it all, but better than coming
Maybe
back.
don't tell them.
Yeah, they don't, right. We've approved it.
Don't tell them, BJ.
Did it?
Okay, you seconded?
I seconded it.
So the motion is for 19.5. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of 19.5 for additional appropriation for senior center, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
But you can't get any laptops.
Yeah, right. I heard that. All right, good. Well, thank you all for your diligence tonight. I apologize for having to push as much off as we did to next week, but I do think that we've had the bulk of the conversations that we need to have for a lot of these items. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hey, Dave, before you do that, let me just ask, I may be the only one that doesn't know the answer, but I do know that Nicole is on a leave of absence for some time period. Who is filling her shoes? And in particular, we've relied on her to put together the mill rate calculation and, wrap up the budget. Who's going to do that?
We're working on that. We've talked with the accountant. We're networking. Matt has some proficiency in the system. He might, in a pinch, help us out, but it's clearly going to be an issue.
To be determined.
Well, when you say you've talked to Ron Nozick about it, is he able to get somebody from his accounting firm to...
He didn't volunteer that.
He has someone who's retiree, recently retired in the last 8 months. He was going to talk to her to see.
Yeah.
So he's going to ask her if she wanted to do some billing.
We haven't heard back, but
Temp
it
work.
would be wonderful.
From the accounting firm. A retired from the accounting
That's great. I'm just saying it's getting urgent.
Right, I think that's why they've got all the irons in the fire.
It does sound like no one's put their head in the sand about it, but BJ's question is well placed, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's good.
Figured out deposits.
Yep.
Cross-referencing, double-checking, everybody's got their role.
Yeah.
You volunteering, BJ? Is there a motion?
Now you can adjourn, Dave.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Clock.
10?
Second.
10.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Great, thank you all, appreciate it.